Hyalka territory is a lush land and the largest in the empire, hiding limitless potential and being a valuable asset that is difficult to refuse, especially for a deposed prince consort. With an uncertain future ahead, but for 15 years, she has thrived on the land called opportunity. This girl has lived carelessly, drowning in alcohol and tears for a long time. There were times she felt desperate. She clasped her hands and prayed, "Father, let me go back to the past. My little apple pie, I will turn you into the noblest woman of this kingdom. Please, please give me another chance." Yes, the little girl hugged her beloved father tightly. "So what about me, father? Father?" The girl suddenly froze as before her were the dried bones of a human. "Father! Father! Stop!" This memory, this face, her father faded away in her consciousness as she gradually woke up. Slowly opening her eyes and looking around, this is the residence of Count Lincoln. Then the body lying right before me, this is. It's true. It's my father, who passed away 15 years ago. I really have gone back to the past. The girl pondered dreamily about the things in front of her, as if they were all true. Lost in thought, the voice of the man behind her resounded, "Finally, you have regained consciousness, Rennie. You cried like a madman and even bit someone. Consort, why would you let others see you like that?" Rennie Lincoln's teary eyes revealed anger. Indeed, he was Prince Michael Alesh, the one who caused her such extreme misery. Many years ago, Count Lincoln, Rennie Lincoln's father, gave his daughter a gift. It was the highest position in the empire, Alan. So at the age of 12, Rennie Lincoln was engaged to the prince and was given a new title, the Prince Consort or wife of Michael Alesh. However, any political marriage like theirs had no affection between her and the prince. Jelicinia Canaria, the princess held hostage from the Canaria kingdom, enchanted the prince and made him brutally impose an unreasonable tyranny. "Prince, please stop importing salt from the Sarawak desert, and buy salt from our kingdom instead." She said bold words indeed. If done so, there will be riots in Sarawak. But because she has asked for it, then so be it, the prince replied gently. Some time later, indeed, there were riots in Sarawak due to dissatisfaction with recent monopoly agreements. Yet Michael just responded indifferently, "So what?" He was extremely shocked by the attitude of the ruler towards the future of the kingdom, that, "This is the king's order, requiring the prince to directly resolve this issue." Michael coldly replied, "If you want to solve such a matter, isn't it better to use an experienced general to quell the riots instead of me? Call Count Link, have him lead the troops instead." The old retired father accepted the command to go to war. However, he had a condition that the prince must rearrange his relationship with Canaria and focus entirely on the current consort. The father, for the sake of his daughter's position and his own honor, went to battle and perished far away on the battlefield. "Exactly, Rennie. I must make it official." Michael bowed deeply, each word resounding with authority. "I hope you will cancel the marriage." Drops of her bitter tears silently fell as she listened to the treacherous words. "Your Highness, is that what you should say in front of my father's coffin?" Michael only revealed a wicked smile. 15 years ago, Rennie Lincoln was still a pure and righteous girl. She only dared to whisper her grievances to him timidly. This time, reborn, she mocked herself. Why would you say such words in front of the corpse of the deceased instead of him? This time, also in this same place, Rennie Lincoln screamed in disgust. "He died because of the order issued by you, and now you dare to say such words in front of him?" Michael simply responded indifferently, "Of course, Rennie, I will compensate for your father's death. His loyalty and dedication deserve reward." He smirked disdainfully. "Let's see, I am also considering giving you a stipend, 1,000,000 Allen, and the Hyalka territory. Is that enough?" Rennie Lincoln sneered silently. "It's Hyalka territory again. Just like 15 years ago, but this time I won't yield to your family, you wretch." Rennie Lincoln shouted fiercely, "No. Blood debt must be paid with blood." Michael was surprised to see the once weak girl suddenly become furious. She was screaming in anger, "Bring out the life of Princess Canaria. My father died because of the princess's request, so at least her wrist should be cut so that I can relieve this anger." Michael yelled loudly, "What? This heartless monster!" Rennie Lincoln shouted loudly and rushed towards him with a crazy look. "If you don't like it, then give me your neck, Michael Allen. I have to cut it up for the dogs to eat. Only then can I relieve this hatred. You despicable beast!" Michael angrily shouted, "Rennie Lincoln, you insolent brat." With that, he slapped her hard, causing her to stagger and fall backwards. He continued to curse, "Every time you open your mouth, it's nonsense. I thought you only lost your father, but it seems you've lost your mind too." With that, he left hastily and didn't forget to mention the request to annul the marriage. While the prince was distracted, Rennie Lincoln grabbed her father's sword, then rushed straight towards him, silently praying, "Father, please give me a chance to tear Michael Allen's body apart." In a moment, Michael faced Rennie Lincoln's gaze filled with hatred, staring at him like an enemy. Along with the piercing pain that shot through his head, he screamed in extreme agony. The Lincoln family sword reflected his terrified face and the fresh, pungent smell of the villain's blood. He cried out for help, "Royal Guards! Quickly seize that thing! She dares to stab me, Rennie!" Rennie Lincoln was still in a furious rage, shouting loudly, "Don't you dare call my name!" She drew her sword and screamed madly, "That is the precious name my father bestowed upon me." Swish! The sword pierced flesh, then there was silence. Just like that, Rennie Lincoln found herself back in the past, on the exact day 15 years ago when she was abandoned by her fiancé. 2 months later, at the royal palace. "Rennie Delphin Lincoln, you are stripped of your title as prince consort for the attempted murder of the prince." The king's authoritative voice rang in Rennie's ears, making her realize that this was reality, not a dream. She had truly returned to the past. Instead of receiving money and the prosperous Hialka territory, she knelt here as a criminal, stripped of all rights of the Link family, including the territory and assets, all seized by the wretched Michael. Yet in this second life, Rennie Lincoln had shattered one of that wretch's legs. What a worthwhile exchange! Thinking of this, she laughed maniacally. Michael, upon seeing her demeanor, was enraged. He shouted angrily, "Rennie Lincoln! Your arrogant family member is a criminal. Father! Do something about this madwoman!" The king furrowed his brows and whispered harshly to him, "Shut your mouth, you fool! Because of what your family and the little Canaria girl have done, the royal family's reputation has plummeted. Furthermore, the whole country mourns the death of Count Link, yet you still want to declare an annulment? Be thankful you're still a prince." Turning back to Rennie, the old king declared, "The only remaining property of Rinlin Lincoln is the land to which you will be exiled, Leden territory of the Rennie family." She smirked contemptuously. Leden was her mother's territory. Unlike Hialka, it snowed 6 months out of the year, a barren and impoverished land. In truth, they wanted her to freeze to death on her way there. Rennie Lincoln silently thought, "Fine, so be it. In the place where you exile me, I will continue to survive and curse you, Allen." In the blinding snowstorm, Rennie shivered from the cold and endured the hollow words of the supervisor accompanying her convoy. He had climbed this dangerous snowy mountain with her for a whole month to reach Leden. Despite the remote journey, he readily agreed to follow along. Ah, so it was also a plot, she realized, unsurprised. Wait a moment. I need additional funds to return, don't I? Bring out everything you have, especially the sword at your waist, he began to demand. Rennie Lincoln firmly grasped the sword in her hand and declared, "This is the sword of the Link family. If your household dares to covet it, beware that even a slight touch could cost you your head. Well then, perhaps the head of a deposed prince consort will fall first, won't it?" With his words, a sharp blade pressed against Rennie's neck. She had to grit her teeth and relent. Survival is the #1 priority now. How could I discard the life my father helped me obtain once again? Agreed, she said coldly, with irritation evident in her voice. Here, take all my personal belongings and leave. The guard still wouldn't let go. Hold on, I told you to bring out everything you have. Saying this, he used his dirty hands to restrain her. Reconnecting angrily jerked her hand away. I've given you everything, what more do you want? But he smirked deviously, saying, no, there's still one thing left. You look very valuable. If I don't get to taste you, I'll regret it. Pfft. A spit landed on the ruffian's face. Reconnecting glared at him with disgust and retorted sharply, get lost. This only enraged him further. He gnashed his teeth in humiliation. Then, he delivered a painful punch to Reconnecting, accompanied by curses. Reconnecting screamed in agony as she was thrown to the ground, and he pulled her hair violently. I was planning to taste the prince consort, but now that's you. Even if you whine, there's only so much I'll tolerate. Despite her fear, Reconnecting shouted back, you will surely regret this. She tried to scream, not wanting to die, at least not here. Suddenly, something flew at them. The guard, lightning fast, became motionless, only managing to utter, ah, before collapsing forward, his head covered in blood. Reconnecting couldn't help but be stunned by the scene. What happened? Why did he suddenly fall like that? Was he hit by something? He seems to be in pain. Wait, now's not the time to think about that, I can't miss this opportunity. Thinking this, she raised her sword and yelled, die. The last escort also fell under the blade, ending his mission in this story deservedly. Reconnecting gasped for breath, exclaiming internally, I did it. I did it. I'm still alive. She sheathed her sword and sat down heavily on the snowy ground, panting heavily. Before she could compose herself, Reconnecting noticed something lying next to the fallen escort. Fruit? There's blood on it. Did he get hit by this thing? Rustle! Before she could think further, she heard a strange noise nearby, as if something was hiding behind the bushes. She raised her sword, ready to fight. Whoever doesn't want to die, show yourself. But there was no response until the noise came again, surprising Reconnecting immensely. Behind that bush was a rather peculiar-looking boy with a sallow face. He looked emaciated, as if starved for days, with disheveled hair and a vacant expression, resembling a specter. Reconnecting looked at him curiously, wondering, how can a child be here? Could he be from the savage tribes living in the northern mountains, as my father used to tell? They must be using the child as bait to capture humans for food during winter. Do they think I'll be fooled? With these thoughts, she gripped her sword tightly and yelled, stay away. If you dare to come closer, I'll strike. The boy hesitated for a moment at her threat, but instead of running away, he charged straight towards Reconnecting. She shouted, I'm serious. Stay back. If you come any closer, I'll strike you. Ignoring her threats, the boy continued to approach. Although Reconnecting didn't want to harm a child who had just saved her, her instincts took over, and her sword swung instinctively. Swoosh! Drops of blood splattered onto the white snow as the sword halted mid-air. Reconnecting looked horrified as the boy caught the blade without flinching. Despite holding the sword with both hands, she began to tremble. The boy's incredible strength left her completely immobilized. Lowering the blade, the boy moved closer to her. He's coming closer like this. Reconnecting trembled in fear. Since when had the boy tightly grasped her hand and seemed about to bite it? Reconnecting could only grit her teeth, imagining her fate. This is not good. I'll be eaten by this brat. Suddenly, in the cold and silent space, a very faint noise echoed. Ren slowly opened her eyes to find herself safe. The boy was nibbling on her slender fingers like a small puppy. Although somewhat uncomfortable, it seemed the boy was caring for her wounds, even in places like between her fingers. Rennie Lincoln was surprised because she hadn't noticed those injuries on her hand before. Why did he lick his hand to heal the wounds, she pondered. Ren calmed down and hesitantly asked, "Was that you who threw?" The boy quickly nodded. "Oh, so the boy didn't mean to harm me," Rennie Lincoln said hesitantly and thanked him. The boy just stood there, staring at her blankly. He probably doesn't understand much, huh? Rennie Lincoln speculated about this wild child. Then she knelt down and slowly said, "Thank you for saving me." Suddenly, she noticed blood dripping from the boy's hand onto the snow. Rennie Lincoln felt guilty and hurried to find a way to treat his wounds. Under the freezing snow, Rennie Lincoln cursed the guard, as both the map and bandages were rendered unusable by his blood. Ha! This wretch dies, but still won't let go. The boy suddenly jumped up, shouting, "Ah! You called." Rennie Lincoln turned back to see the boy trembling, as if wanting to say something. Does he want to ask who called me, or something similar? Rennie Lincoln remembered that she had just said "ha" earlier, perhaps the boy misunderstood it as his name. She reached out to touch the boy, who instinctively recoiled and trembled, pleading, "Ah." Seeing the boy so frightened, Rennie Lincoln gently reassured, "I won't hurt you." He looked pitiful with that appearance, as if he had endured a childhood of mistreatment. Rennie Lincoln slowly extended her hand. At first, he was cautious, but then he realized her goodwill, so he stood still, waiting. Rennie Lincoln gently stroked his head with a friendly and gentle expression, saying, "Thank you." While the boy was staring blankly at his bandaged hand, Rennie Lincoln picked up the map and intended to continue the journey before sunset. Muttering to herself, "Although the direction is unclear, Leen seems to be in this direction." The boy suddenly rushed out to block her path. "No, not this way." Rennie Lincoln expressed her language differences. "What?" Then she remembered the savage tribe her father used to tell her about, who often used children as bait. This deduction sent a shiver down her spine, but she reassured herself, "No, don't be afraid. This child is doing this for me, so let's try to trust him and listen to what he says." Rennie Lincoln lowered her head and asked, "If it's not this way, then which way should we go?" The boy continued to mutter, "No, not this way," and pointed in another direction before darting off, "No, this way." Rennie Lincoln hurriedly called out, "Let's go together. I can't run as fast as you." Thus, 2 more hours passed, and the sky began to darken. Rennie Lincoln scanned the distance, and there it was, a castle. Finally, after many days of hardship, she had reached Leen. Looking back at the boy standing behind her, she remarked suspiciously, "Well, arriving faster than the map. How does he know the way?" However, they still had quite a distance to go, and tonight they had to take temporary refuge in a cave, as the snowfall was getting heavier and it was not advisable to descend the mountain. While Rennie was discussing their plans for the next day, the boy sat in a corner, quietly recording all of her actions. His dark, intelligent eyes widened with excitement and curiosity. Rennie let out a relaxed sigh as she finally managed to start a fire. When she turned back and saw the innocent look on the child's face, she exclaimed, "Wow, wow, wow." It turned out that this was the first time the boy had seen someone use a stone to make fire. Still a child, he held the stone as if it were a toy and played with it enthusiastically. Rennie looked at him with no less curiosity, truly fascinated by his reaction. "Not at all," the boy replied. It seemed that he only knew how to say that one phrase. Rennie Lincoln asked him again to confirm his language abilities. Meanwhile, the boy continued to play with the stone and replied, "Not at all." Rennie thought to herself that she would have to teach him how to speak properly after bringing him to Leen. Looking at the dirty child in front of her, she couldn't help but wonder, where did this child come from and what has he been through? It seemed that the boy was not like someone from the cannibal tribe her father had mentioned. Finally, they arrived at Leen. Leen was a desolate territory, and under the harsh weather of winter, it looked even more bleak and pitiful. While standing guard at the gate, a soldier was startled by the commotion below. Oh! The boy hesitated, seeming reluctant to enter the city. Meanwhile, Rennie Lincoln tried to calm him down. Stay calm, I don't know who you are, but you probably don't have anyone to look after you. Come with me. In Leen, the two of us will. But the boy didn't listen and tried to escape from her. Rennie Lincoln began to feel frustrated. Actually, this kid is too strong. I can't keep up with him. How can I calm him down? Suddenly, she noticed a man carrying a baguette outside the city gate, and her plan immediately came to mind. That's right, if it's food, maybe it will lure him. Thinking quickly, Rennie Lincoln hurried to the man, bought 2 baguettes, and after paying, she turned back to see how the boy was doing. Sure enough, she saw that he had stopped running, his innocent face truly captivated by the food. Rennie Lincoln mimicked eating the baguette and gestured, "You eat it like this." Then she tossed the baguette in front of the boy. Smelling the irresistible aroma, in the midst of hunger and cold, his eyes sparkled like a puppy's as he eagerly devoured the warm food. Rennie Lincoln chuckled with satisfaction. That's right, well done. Have another one. Blushing with happiness, the boy held the remaining baguette and looked at the girl in front of him, her kind eyes and golden hair shining like the sun. How adorable, that's what a good boy looks like. It's called bread. Rennie Lincoln happily explained to her new friend. The boy had his head stroked by the girl, his cheeks reddening even more. Bread, he repeated the new word he had learned. That's right, bread. If you come with me to my village, I'll give you even more bread. So come with me, okay? The boy shyly nodded his head, then finally took the soft hand and walked through the city gate with her. Good job, good boy, although it's hard to believe, I am the lord of this place. Rennie Lincoln happily walked and told stories to the child who didn't understand all the languages she was using. At Leden's mansion, a woman named Sarah came out to welcome Rennie. She seemed to be the steward of this mansion and had taken over managing everything on behalf of the lord. According to Sarah, the former lord of Leden has not visited this land for 20 years. Rennie Lincoln could only sigh inwardly, this place is truly pitiful compared to the Hyalka territory that she inherited from her past life. Leden only occupies 1/10 of the land area, and even this old and dilapidated mansion is nearly 300 years old. Moreover, snowfall persists for up to 6 months in a year, making food scarce. There are barely over 20 soldiers capable of defending this vast territory. Rennie Lincoln grimaced bitterly, at least there won't be any wars between territories, because no one bothers to pay attention to this barren land. She couldn't believe that the land belonging to her mother's Peden clan could be in such a position. Sarah mentioned that the former lord, Rennie's cousin, was born and raised in the bustling city of Viken, so he managed everything through delegated authority. During his lifetime, he only visited Leden 3 times. Rennie Lincoln thought to herself, in other words, she's hinting that a stranger like me shouldn't meddle in their affairs. But I won't let that happen, especially when that wretch Michael is still alive, and I haven't had my revenge yet. Rennie Lincoln's tone turned threatening, a deposed crown prince expelled from the capital for treason, isn't it, woman? It must be hard for your family now, with such a woman becoming the lord, isn't it? Sarah, both frightened and uncomfortable, replied, I didn't mean that. Why not? From now on, assist me in becoming the true lord of this place. Sarah hesitantly promised, I'll help you in any way I can, ma'am. Rennie Lincoln pointed to the boy beside her, the first thing I want you to do is to investigate this child. He saved my life even though he looks like an orphan. But try to find out his background first. And for now, take him to bathe. Sarah obediently followed the Lord's orders. Later, a maid tried to take the boy for a bath, but he resisted and ran away, angering the maid who shouted, You little devil! Stop right there! Not gonna happen, the boy only knew how to say that and ran off. Rennie Lincoln found this somewhat amusing and said, Look at that boy. Then, turning to the chasing servants, she teased, Hey kid, wanna come over here? No, no. Not gonna happen. Rennie Lincoln couldn't help but smirk at the sight of the struggling servants chasing after the boy. After a while, Sarah returned and informed the Lord about the child's background. Her face showed a hint of embarrassment. Actually, that boy is a Krona. Rennie Lincoln couldn't hide her shock. The boy is from the Krona lineage, a family that was massacred during the man raids. Krona? Could he be the crazy dog of Michael Alesh from the previous life? She shivered involuntarily at the mention of that name. Well, Krona, he suddenly appeared one day and became a war hero for Alan Kess. He was known to be a hybrid with the bloodline of the man raids. But I know the truth about his lineage. He is not a hybrid with the man raids, but the illegitimate child of the Emperor. 17 years ago, when the Emperor was inspecting the northern lands, he had an affair with the daughter of the Krona clan and had a child. When the Empress learned of this, she was extremely jealous and furious, wanting the heir of the Emperor to be only Prince Michael. So she ordered the complete destruction of the Krona clan in a sea of flames, exterminating every member without leaving anyone alive. The Krona clan was accused of treason and had to endure a brutal massacre. From children to pregnant women, even livestock were not spared. Everyone thought Wild Krona was dead. But when Michael Alesh turned 34, which was 10 years after his divorce, Michael brought him back to the palace. He fought fiercely on the battlefield and always emerged victorious. Everyone often called him the Mad Dog because of his absolute loyalty and the vast territory he brought to his master. But all these achievements were overshadowed by Michael's heavy-handedness instead of praising him as a war hero. Ignorant people only knew it was Michael Alesh's accomplishment. And thus, Michael sat securely on the throne, receiving the love of all the people in this kingdom. Will Krona, a cursed name. I am confident that I can incite a rebellion. Remembering the previous life's memories when Hyalka was preparing for war, Wild Krona had come to her as if he had been ready beforehand, even though Hyalka had a well-trained army and vast wealth. Yet, against that man, Wild Krona, she still couldn't be confident when facing him. Back to reality, the boy was being groomed after his bath, his long hair being combed. Rennie Lincoln couldn't help but laugh at his adorable appearance. Look, you're even more handsome now. The servants behind were quite confused because the boy wouldn't let anyone touch him except Rennie. Looking at the innocent face sitting there, Rennie's hands unconsciously trembled. Will Krona, a dark thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Now that you're done bathing, why don't we go to the dining room and enjoy some bread? The boy happily ran off upon hearing there was bread. Bread! Rennie Lincoln closed the door and sank into thought. If that boy is truly Will Krona, then in this life, Wild Krona will be on my side. You will become my knight, grow up in my embrace, and do everything as I say. She said to him, thank you, Will, no, I mean from now on your name will be Will Hump. Will Hump sounds good. His gentle demeanor made the boy blush. She stroked his head and silently thought about the treasure in her hands. Michael Alesh definitely won't lay a hand on this child. In Will Hump's study, he felt very happy as the beautiful sister tied his hair. Even more surprising was that the child, emaciated from prolonged hunger, was only 16 years old. The long-term deprivation had made his body thin and small. He was even only a few years younger than Rennie Lincoln. Today is Thanksgiving, so Sarah took on the task of distributing food rations to the refugees. The winters in Leen are harsh, and without food supplies, the villagers would starve. Rennie Lincoln reviewed the available resources in the territory: salt, flour, dried beans. Oh, flour is so expensive. Oh right, corn can be grown here. Why don't we grind it into flour and distribute it to everyone? Sarah replied, that's a good idea, but we don't have enough manpower to do that. There are very few people living in this territory, so all resources are limited. Even counting all the able-bodied youths in Leen, there are not even 100 people. Even on Thanksgiving Day, instead of having a plump turkey like in the capital, the people of Leen only receive wild geese hunted by the guards. After the steward reported the situation and left, Rennie Lincoln felt extremely helpless. A impoverished territory to the point of misery. It's completely different from Hyalka, where she owned 3,000 soldiers each year getting new swords and shields. But now, she sighed at the records. This year the guard captain was rewarded with a bag of dried apples. If this continues, how will revenge ever be achieved? Rennie Lincoln cursed, damn it. Wilde heard this and innocently responded, thinking she was calling his name. Rennie Lincoln quickly covered her mouth. Sorry, Wilhump, I wasn't talking to you. I promised not to swear in front of you, but it just slipped out. I'm sorry. The boy blushed in response to her sincere words, even though he didn't fully understand all the words. Wilhump nodded and said, It's okay. Your meaning is no need to apologize? I understand you. Okay, now I will check your homework, Rennie said. When she looked at the piece of paper with scribbled words, cornmeal, soldiers, turkey, she thought, this kid is thinking about something else now. These aren't the things Sarah and I were talking about. Should I hire him as a secretary or in a similar position? Anyway, you did well. Will blushed again as his older sister stroked his head. A day as Lord in Leden is very difficult, having to manage food for the people and enduring their curious gazes, all because they heard rumors that she was crazy for losing her father and daring to draw a sword against the crown prince. Rennie Lincoln ignored the gossip, because those petty people who only believe in rumors are of no consequence. Thus, she had no choice but to homeschool Wilhump. One day, Wilhump knocked down a soldier while practicing swordsmanship. His physical strength was indeed extraordinary. Sensing something was wrong, he dropped his sword and rushed to hug her tightly in fear. No, it's not true. Rennie Lincoln patted his head reassuringly. Well done. In her heart, she was quite conflicted. Teaching letters and words she could handle, but swordsmanship, she couldn't, as there was no teacher for the boy. If he were with Michael, it would be different. He would easily find a teacher for Wilde. But how would Michael handle it when he knew the child was the wild son of the emperor and raised him? Seeing the ring on the boy's finger, Rennie thought, a ring? Could it be a royal ring or something? What am I thinking? A mischievous spark flickered in Rennie's eyes before she stopped herself. Will suddenly showed her the paper he had written on, proudly displaying it. You finished writing? Good job, she praised, which left the boy dumbfounded. He replied, not really. Then he shyly sniffled, pushing back closer to her neck. Rennie couldn't understand his actions. What did you just do? But the boy blushed and ran off, leaving Rennie sitting alone in the room. She chuckled to herself, wow. That kid knows how to do those cute actions. The next morning, in the city of Leden, Rennie Lincoln was overjoyed because the territory would be welcoming a very important guest to her. A firm voice of a man echoed, Your Highness, may I humbly request an audience? The man with striking blue eyes, named Demitry, a close friend of Rennie Lincoln, stood before her. Oh, it's wonderful to see you here, she exclaimed with great delight. Please forgive me for the delayed notice. As soon as I heard, I rushed here. Your Highness left the capital without an escort, but... Rennie Lincoln's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at her friend. Please don't say that. Your presence here brings me so much happiness. Demitry smiled gently. As they reunited, Wilde, who stood nearby observing, felt a tinge of jealousy brewing inside. Demitry was a childhood friend whom I spent a lot of time playing with when I was a little girl. He was one of my father's most skilled knights, and also my first love, she recounted happily to Will. Later, when Will was led away, Demitry wiped a tear from his eye and shared, I never thought the northern territories rumored to be so cold. When I crossed the last mountain, I feared your highness had been buried in the snow. He said to her. Rennie Lincoln responded cheerfully, that's not interesting at all. And as I've told you before, don't call me your highness anymore. Then what should I call you? You used to call me Miss, before I got married, right? Demitry began to lighten up after seeing that she was safe. Now that you have your authority back, Should I call you lady? Oh my, do as you please. Rennie teased. Yes, my lady. I mean, miss. Demitry corrected himself with a chuckle. Shortly after their reunion, Demitry began inquiring about the situation in Leen. I can see Miss is doing a great job. I was a bit worried because this territory seems quite barren. Rennie Lincoln replied, yes, compared to my time managing Hyalka. She caught herself mid-sentence, realizing she had almost mentioned her past life. Indeed, it's quite shocking here. I was used to living in luxury as the prince's consort, she added. What does Miss plan to do now? He asked. Rennie Lincoln hesitated at the question, then looked at Demitry. Why are you so curious about this? She asked. The knight scratched his head awkwardly. Please forgive my question, it seems a bit forward. That's okay, just speak your mind, Rennie reassured him. Demitry looked directly at her and said frankly, I suspect Miss still harbors feelings for the crown prince. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. If Demitry had come just a year later, I would have assumed he came to inquire about his health, but he arrived at this castle only a few months after I was deposed. That means he sought me out shortly after my arrival in Leen. The crown prince couldn't recover from the shock of being injured, so all the nobles in the kingdom must be cautious in their dealings with the emperor. Yet, despite all that, he still came here at this sensitive time. So, Demitry, were you kicked out of your family? Or did you leave them to come here? Rennie asked straightforwardly, causing Demitry to stutter a bit. Well, if you want to know, perhaps another time, he replied. Surely, your older brother kicked you out after you said you would leave the family, right? The perceptive young woman continued, making the young man uncomfortable. You're correct, Mississippi Michael Alish couldn't contain his excitement when he took over the Lincoln estate. When Miss became a prisoner, he attempted to seize the wealth of the Lincoln household. He not only sought to expand control over the territory, but also the soldiers. Wasn't the strength of the Lincoln family mainly from the military? I couldn't stand seeing that ruthless scoundrel controlling the Lincoln troops. So. At this point, Demitry blushed. Rennie laughed heartily, ha ha. The former lord wants to make me laugh with all the things he's done. Despite her teasing, Rennie was truly happy that Demitry wanted to demonstrate his loyalty to her. However, considering that he came here for her without any hesitation, she found it difficult to see such talent wasted in this desolate land. She felt sorry for that. Nevertheless, Demitry remained confident that he could accomplish something. I've seen the roster before coming to Leen. This territory doesn't even have 50 guards, he said. Rennie corrected him, saying it's not even 30 yet. Demitry grimaced, are you kidding me? Well, it's the truth. You'll have to accept it. Oh, the hardship, he exclaimed in frustration, which made Rennie a bit concerned. Could Demitry be buried in this desolate land? Suddenly, she remembered when defeating the knight on that day. Wait! Isn't that boy in need of swordsmanship lessons? She quickly changed the subject. Instead of leading rebels, how about becoming a swordsmanship teacher? Demitry was surprised. Excuse me, Mississippi. Did you just suggest that I teach swordsmanship to children? Almost. Didn't you see the boy sitting here earlier? He's in the dining hall now. Demitry agreed, I guess I'll have to charge more than just a bag of flour for tutoring now. Rennie teased, how about a bag of flour and a side of goose meat for dinner tonight? You're not planning to reward me with that, are you? Demitry, accustomed to luxurious living in the capital, showed his reluctance. You can endure hunger if you don't want to accept it. I don't have luxurious meals for an uninvited guest, Rennie retorted. Their intimate conversation warmed up the cold atmosphere of this northern mountainous region. The sunset began to cast its glow over the city of Leen. The boy was about to eat when he saw two people entering the dining hall looking for him. Willam, greetings. Rennie Lincoln and Demitry approached him arm in arm, and she cheerfully introduced him to the boy. This is Demitry. The guardsman glanced at Will with a serious expression, making the boy a bit wary. Rennie ordered Demitry, the boy saved my life. Treat him kindly and be friendly. Sit next to him. He approached Will again and greeted him warmly, contrasting his previous demeanor. The boy immediately slammed the table and stood up, then stormed out of the room angrily, shooting a fierce glance at the unfamiliar young man before leaving. Both Demitry and Rennie were not pleased with his behavior. However, she still tried to be as gentle as possible. Willam, you must eat. Come here and join me, she said. But it seemed that this coaxing method didn't work with the boy. Demitry was quite annoyed. Let me go after him, the high-ranking knight whispered, but she stopped him. No, Willam is a child who has been mistreated. He will be afraid of unfamiliar adults. Let me try this. Demitry was dumbfounded to see the lady he had known for many years playing such a prank. What are you doing? Rennie was playing with her food, teasingly tempting him like one would tease a hungry animal. Delicious. Absolutely delightful. She didn't forget to review the food in front of him as a lure. Each juicy piece of meat melted in her mouth, the seasoning just right on her tongue. It was so wonderful. Demitry was getting exasperated, whispering continuously, "What are you doing?" "Believe me, this is a way to get the attention of a hungry child," she said confidently. It seemed she was wrong. Even with this trick, Wild still stayed behind the door, glaring at the unfamiliar man who was monopolizing his companion. Demitry was quite amused by the lady's funny behavior. Still not enough? Anyone who sees his current expression would think you're raising a child. Well, I'll help you get his attention. With that, Demitry poured milk sauce over his steak like Rennie was doing. But as soon as he turned back, he saw the boy leaving as fast as the wind. They had to continue their dinner without him. A few days later, Rennie Lincoln appeared very annoyed, looking at Wild. "You haven't left your room for 4 days now. You've been fasting since then. Is something wrong?" The boy just groaned. "No." She lost her patience. "Nothing? Come out now, or else." Then she suddenly turned to Demitry. "How should we intimidate children of this age? How old is he? 16? That's crazy. How could that be possible?" Demitry started to get annoyed. Rennie immediately reprimanded him. "Did you just curse his master?" He had to kneel down and apologize. No, I was just surprised that this boy is only 16. I thought so. He's too childish and skinny." Demitry began to provoke. "What? Kids who are 16 are immature everywhere. There's no shortage of soldiers who look like miserable horses just because they don't eat much. A teenager who acts like a child will look smaller than a newborn foal. I have no words when I see this boy who is only 16. Will remained calm under the blanket, listening to all the derogatory remarks the stranger made about him. "When I was 16, I followed Duke Lincoln to the battlefield and took care of him," Demitry sighed. Rennie Lincoln, upon hearing this, suddenly remembered the past. "Yes, you used to be his squire." Demitry sighed. "Yes, all thanks to Miss Rennie's pampering and protection of the boy. It seems like you intended to coddle him like a child forever." She replied weakly. "No, it's not like that." "All right, leave it to me," Demitry said, reaching under the blanket and grabbing Wild's leg, causing him to startle. He lifted the boy as if he were lifting a small cat and said sternly, "Willam is the name given to you by the Lord. You will never be worthy of that name if you behave like this." With that, he pushed Wild back to his original place. Rennie appeared concerned about his violence, but Demitry continued his attack. "You're 16, aren't you?" He smirked. "When I was 18, I proposed to Rennie." As soon as he finished speaking, Rennie grabbed his hair and pulled it all out. "Are you crazy? Why would you say such things in front of a child?" He shrugged indifferently. "That's the truth. As they teased each other, they suddenly felt a heavy atmosphere behind them. Will was sitting upright on the bed. Wow, look at what you've done. You're very smart indeed. It doesn't matter how childish you look, a 16-year-old can be very arrogant. When you're 18, you'll still be sneaking around to watch Rennie like that, won't you? The boy seemed a bit shaken. No, I won't. Demitry chuckled. Look at your eyes, show some respect and go to class. In Rennie's thoughts about Demitry, he was a very caring and gentle young man, always so with her. Once she climbed a tree and accidentally slipped. Demitry quickly rushed over and caught her. That moment Rennie would never forget. The young man was always concerned for her, overlooking all her foolish actions with a smile. Clearly, those memories and emotions were real. But now... Demitry, what are you doing? Rennie exclaimed. Don't interfere with us, men have their own way of talking, Demitry insisted firmly, showing his masculinity. Are you taking the boy away like this? Rennie worriedly protested. Demitry responded coldly, I'll let him go and return. Rennie hesitated, looking at the boy struggling to break free from Demitry. Although reluctant, she had to accept. Willam, I'm sorry, but Demitry will definitely become a good teacher for you. Listen to him and treat him with respect. With that, she gently kissed Will's forehead as if to encourage him. Will suddenly became dizzy, no longer stubborn but obedient like a puppy. Demitry teased, Oh, that's too much, huh? What about the reward for the teacher? You've always been amazing, Rennie said teasingly but with a grateful expression towards her friend. Although it's a bit disappointing, those compliments aren't so bad. With that, he took Rennie's hand and placed a kiss on it. I will fulfill my duty, my lord, he said. Seeing these actions, Will couldn't hide his jealousy. It seemed that Demitry easily understood the thoughts of the boy, as he laughed, leaving her slightly puzzled. What's so funny? Why are you laughing? Demitry asked as he carried the boy away. Nothing, I'm leaving, he replied. Under the cold snowy sky, Wild had to endure intense swordsmanship classes. His new teacher was extremely strict, not tolerating unruly children. The Lord may be lenient with you, but I am not. Do you know why I always stay by Rennie Lincoln's side? It's not to tolerate brats like you. Demitry said sternly. The boy didn't feel scared but instead looked directly at Demitry, listening intently. I heard you saved the Lord's life on the way to Leen. How could a brat like you have the honor of saving the Lord's life? I will make you worthy of that honor. Because that's what he wants. Get up and move if you understand my words. As soon as he finished speaking, a wooden sword was in the boy's hand. Wild gritted his teeth, gripping the sword tightly, and quickly took a fighting stance. Seeing the boy so determined, Demitry felt satisfied. He thought to himself, leaving the Empire to convince Rennie to come to this cold land was worth it. Anyway, the day we left the Empire is long gone. Just a few weeks after arriving in Leen, the people here admired the strong and brave knight named Demitry. It seemed that he was very friendly and well-liked by the people here. Rennie felt happy about this, but she also felt a little sad because the Lord had been in Leen for 2 months and was still being shunned by everyone. Rennie, Will's call from behind echoed as she turned around. There stood Wild, appearing tidier and more polished, with his hair cut short and a slightly bashful expression on his face. Rennie Lincoln chuckled, Oh my, Willam, what happened to your hair? Did Demitry cut it for you? Looks like you've been nibbled by mice. Rennie's teasing expression made Willam blush in embarrassment. Rennie gently motioned for the boy to sit down and said, Come here, let me trim your hair for you. When Demitry criticized Will for being 16 and still not knowing how to speak or wield a sword, he felt the need to correct and groom such a young boy carefully. She thought Demitry just wanted an excuse to bully the kid, but now the boy's demeanor had improved significantly, and he could speak more. Rennie Lincoln felt everything had gotten much better. Kid, you're not weird, on the contrary, you're cute. Cute? Rennie Lincoln gently reminded, just a little trim will make you even cuter. Come on, be good and sit still. The blushing boy nodded and obeyed. Locks of hair fell slowly. Rennie seemed to be doing this job quite well, even though it was her first time cutting someone else's hair. Yet she was still confident that she was better than Demitry. Ha ha! Demitry, seeing the boy in this state, banged the table and laughed loudly. What's this? Just returned from military service, huh? The boy blushed and replied, no, not at all. Not at all? You've been beaten like that and still can't fix your way of speaking, he grumbled at Will. Rennie Lincoln blushed in anger at the comments on her first hairdressing work. Looks weird, huh? She tried to stop him from teasing the boy. Demitry said, I got it, and playfully slapped his forehead. Wild Humpton, it's a pleasure to meet your swollen forehead, kiddo. Will Hump pushed him aside in frustration. She kept reminding, I told you not to tease Will anymore. After a few minutes, the meal was served. The menu consisted of boiled potatoes and oatmeal porridge with corn, sounding quite dreadful in this freezing cold. Though Demitry had anticipated this, he couldn't help but express his surprise. Quite a diet there. Rennie Lincoln replied, that's already luxurious for this winter. Even the kid sitting next to you never complains about the meal. I didn't mean it that way, he pulled Will Hump closer and argued, if you want this kid to grow up fast and handsome like me, he needs to eat more meat. Rennie frowned, pondering. He was right, but what could she do? Suddenly, an idea flashed in her mind. That's right, if I give Will the amount of meat I've saved, maybe. Demitry exclaimed, are you kidding me? If this were in the capital, you'd be bedridden for 6 months. But here, with the weather so cold. Will nodded in agreement with him. Rennie persisted stubbornly, but I don't feel cold. Demitry raised a finger to silence her. Try taking off your cloak and then talk. Don't quack like a duck. Will was somewhat stunned by his actions, then he made a stubborn face until he returned to his original position. And I'm thinking of going hunting in winter. It seemed that the women had said too much before hearing all the necessary things. Hunting? Yes, with this boy here. Will was startled by Demitry's suggestion. Rennie objected in a raised voice, how can such a little boy go hunting? After hearing these words, Will felt melancholic. Hey little one, are you really that small? Wild shook his head in confusion at the teasing, which made Demitry laugh heartily. You look so sad, how can you be? He also said he's already grown up. She's still worried like a mother always thinking her child is too small. Furthermore, right now, there aren't enough guards to protect the castle, but there's no other way. Rennie sighed, please don't let the elk trample you to death. At the well of the mansion, Will was staring blankly at the strange object called a toothbrush in his hand. The reason he had to use this cumbersome thing was that Demitry had threatened that if Will didn't brush his teeth, he'd be the first on the list for the elk hunting tomorrow. Lost in thought, Will heard Rennie calling. She recounted how she used to hate brushing her teeth too. But because her father said that if her teeth were clean, even if the prince came to propose, he'd run away. At this point, she felt a little sad, suddenly thinking, I never thought I'd one day hit the prince's foot. Wild softly asked if Rennie didn't like it either. Of course. I hate men who don't brush their teeth. Rennie replied sharply. Upon hearing this, Will immediately began vigorously brushing his teeth. She looked at the boy and thought to herself, Demitry says I treat a 16-year-old boy like a 6-year-old child. But he's so cute like this, how can I treat him like an adult? Seeing that Will had finished brushing his teeth, Rennie approached to inspect. Her fingers glided over his white, baby teeth, making Wild feel embarrassed and shy. Well done, all clean now, she praised gently, patting his head. You did well. That night, Rennie let him stay in her room and told him fairy tales about the elk Hansi, the goddess of vengeance who hated the elk, and Altia, the goddess of peace and prosperity. Altia would lull Hansi to sleep on the elk's back, traveling the world to share peace and prosperity. If the winter suddenly became warm, people would say that Altia had put Hansi to sleep. But after those warm days, there would inevitably be huge snowstorms due to Hansi's anger. Demitry interrupted, "That's not something to tell children. It's too noisy, I only know this story," Rennie snapped. Will chimed in, "Yes, yes. If Hansi sleeps, the weather becomes mild, so Altia has to lull her to sleep on the elk's back and wander the world for 21 nights, sharing peace and warmth. If you think about it, without Hansi, there wouldn't be spring. What's wrong with that? If Hansi could give birth, what did she and Altia do while sleeping together for 21 nights? Demitry asked, provokingly. Rennie's face suddenly turned red, she quickly covered Wild's ears with her hand, and Demitry mocked, "Too late." Rennie shouted loudly, but only heard Demitry's laughter echoing throughout the mansion. Late one evening many years ago, when Demitry was just a 6-year-old boy, Lord Lincoln had adopted a 4-year-old girl with eyes and hair as golden as the sun. Since then, she had been the little lady whom the boy always protected. Despite being the second son of a divine lord in the wealthy count's castle, Demitry was always treated equally with his younger sister. At that time, the count used to tell fairy tales to both Demitry and his sister before bedtime. Demitry was not only Rennie's playmate but also a source of support for the faction of the little lady while living in the count's family. Rennie's current actions were exactly like those of the count, from embracing, holding hands, kissing the boy's forehead, to telling him fairy tales. All these actions came from the count. He involuntarily spoke slowly, "I just want to ask one thing, little lady. Do you remember your father through that kid?" Rennie replied sadly, "Our father has passed away." Demitry spoke softly, "No, little lady, if you can forget, then do so. If you can forget by loving that child, then do it." Rennie Lincoln became stunned. She admitted, "Well, Krona is really good. When a child becomes better after following me, behaving as if I had forgotten my father is the truth. But I can't forget the reason I accepted Will Krona." Her trembling hands clutched the corner of her dress. "If I could forget by stabbing that wretch's foot, then I would have done it long ago." After hearing her sincere story, Will fell into a deep sleep on her warm thigh. Demitry got angry and approached to wake the boy. "Hey, wake up, little one. You have to go back to your own room and sleep." The boy was still in a drowsy state, mumbling, "DMI, stray." Demitry crossed his arms and grumpily exclaimed, "Heavens, you've said it wrong again. When will you learn to pronounce the heavy syllables properly?" Rennie gently stroked the boy's head. "All right, Will Humpton, if your hunt goes well, I'll allow you to call me Rennie. It'll be easier to pronounce." Will Humpton didn't say much, just blushed and nodded in agreement. The next day, Demitry and Wild, along with 6 members of the guard team, carried out their mission. Within just a week, they caught a giant elk, and it was said to be due to Will's skill. That winter saw 2 major snowstorms. Except for a few dozen who got lost and froze to death, Leen territory remained peaceful. 2 months later, at the Leen mansion, Rennie Lincoln was quietly contemplating the future of this land. Despite enduring a harsh winter, Leen was still impoverished and lacking in everything, especially money. In her past life's contract, after 3 more years, there would be a massive fire in the northeastern region, so extensive that it would take a year to completely extinguish the flames, nearly wiping out the entire area. This region, already cold and dry, posed a high risk of forest fires. But what made the situation particularly ominous was the peat. It crystallized from the old leaves mixed with the layer of mud underneath, floating on the marsh and solidifying into easily flammable coal. No one knew that buried peat in the marsh could cause the fire to spread so extensively. Rennie Lincoln reminded herself that she must prevent the forest fire from happening. If they could sell the peat, it would provide a substantial source of income. However, the marshland didn't belong to their territory. How to obtain the right to exploit Slayland Marsh became her pondering. As she was lost in thought, she suddenly heard the voice of the boy calling her, Rennie. When she turned around, she saw a radiant young man looking at her with confident eyes. It's been a while since we met, Wild Humpton. What's the matter? Wild seemed awkward as he conversed with her. Demitry arrived at the horse stable. He's saying there's something he wants. Wild, she interrupted, causing the boy to blush slightly, and she reminded him, when speaking to someone, you need to stand close and look into their eyes, okay? The boy hesitantly responded, yes. Rennie thought to herself that it had been 2 seasons already, and yet, the boy still lacked communication skills. Clearly, he needed more coaching. She continued to advise, and also, you must use formal language with Demitry. Will Humpton reluctantly turned his face away, seemingly discontent. Here we go again, she gently tapped his cheek with her finger, speaking softly, Demitry is your teacher. With that, she remembered that it had been a long time since she had met the boy alone. Demitry had always been with him throughout the winter. He said that Will Humpton had to pay for the elk he had eaten, so he couldn't leave the training camp. Occasionally, on very cold days, I called the boy into my warmest room in the castle, but Demitry was not pleased with this. He argued that it wasn't appropriate for a former princess to bring a boy into her room, fearing that malicious rumors might spread. I think he's right. However, it seems that he's particularly strict with Will Humpton. After a moment of contemplation, Rennie Lincoln came up with a plausible hypothesis. Could it be because he resembles a younger brother? After all, Demitry only has one older brother. But regardless, the boy is growing up so fast, the scars on his chin and neck have disappeared. How did Demitry mold him into who he is now? It's good, I also like those broad, sturdy shoulders. And, of course, that beautiful face. Rennie Lincoln reached out and lightly touched the boy's face. Now, he had grown significantly taller, and he blushed slightly at her intimate gesture. In her previous life, Rennie Lincoln had only met Wild Krona once, when she advised him to tear apart Michael for his own benefit. In a fleeting moment, she noticed the scar above his eyebrow. In the second life, the scar was in the same position. Rennie Lincoln grew more convinced of his identity. This child cannot be anyone else but Wild Krona. Her recent touch had left Will Humpton extremely embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry for standing so close. It's okay. Will Humpton continued, blushing, we're close like this, it's fine. This action reminded her of a previous incident when Demitry complained about the boy's behavior. She had told him that being intimate with him wasn't appropriate, and Demitry shouldn't do it. Thinking about this, Rennie Lincoln chuckled softly, that's right, what's wrong with it? She patted Will Humpton's bottom playfully, like comforting a child. The boy immediately jumped and blushed. Hey, why are you getting so close? Wild exclaimed. It's okay. He then took her hand, pulled her closer, and embraced Rennie Lincoln tightly. This sudden action made her blush with embarrassment. Oh my! Why did he have to do this, especially when I'm wearing this thin dress? I can feel everywhere he touches. His body is so warm, probably just returned from training at the training camp. It took a while before Will Humpton released her from the warm hug. He blushed and asked, was it okay? Rennie Lincoln smiled gently, of course. She continued to hold him close. If not you, then who else would I be close to here? At the horse stable, Demitry had something important to discuss with the Lord. Rennie, the conscription order has been issued from the capital. What? Why here? Rennie was startled. Yes, he looked worried, I don't know why it's come here either. I guess they must hate me, she guessed, impatient, tell me quickly. Demitry sighed, they probably hate me too. A total of 30 soldiers have been conscripted. 30? Rennie couldn't believe her ears. Didn't that number represent all the soldiers in Leden? Demitry added, out of those 30, I'm the only official knight. If all the soldiers are handed over to the conscription order, Leen will have no defenders, and it will be a serious offense if we don't provide enough troops to the emperor. What would Rennie do to save Leen and her friends now? If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel to follow the next developments in this series. In every winter, the starving and thirsty barbarian tribe from the northern mountains will overflow into the empire. Therefore, the kingdom of Alan will issue a decree summoning soldiers to send to each region's lords. At this time, the lords will have two options, send soldiers or send money. Most of them choose to send money because it is more convenient and less costly. However, for this impoverished and desolate land of Leen, neither option is available. Lord Rennie is troubled by this. Nevertheless, she tries to find a way to muster enough soldiers to send to the royal court. Rennie calculates that currently, there are 10 people from Leen officially enlisted. Therefore, they need to mobilize 3 times that number, not to mention in spring, the newly born hunting beasts will aggressively attack the villages. Thus, they need enough soldiers to protect the fortress. But if they obey the Imperial edict, there won't be enough people left to defend Leen. Suddenly, she looks up and asks Demitry, does the Empire know about you being here? Of course. Everyone in the Empire knows about that, he replies. She thinks Demitry has been to the battlefield with his father many times. He's one of the most outstanding knights in the kingdom. Perhaps Michael has spread the rumor that Demitry is in Leen. He wants to see his face when he dies on the road. Thinking this, Rennie angrily curses that vile prince. I wonder if we can ask for help from the nearby camps? If we can get some help with the number of soldiers. But Demitry interrupts, we can't, because the neighboring territories are all in trouble with the royal family because of us. Rennie, frustrated, asks, what do you mean? Our neighbors, the Naditan territory, only sent half the number of soldiers and 2 knights. But there were only exactly 2 knights there, and one of them is the second son of the Lord. Moreover, their eldest son has died of illness. So if Leen asks them. After hearing this, Rennie explodes in anger, shouting, ah! That wretched male! Does that scoundrel want to block all life from this land? Demitry adds, my lord, sweet words can only go so far. But, I agree with that statement. He takes a breath and continues, it's not entirely hopeless. They could send knights from Leen to participate in the battle instead of Lord Nadenton's son. She asked, what do you mean? Aren't you the only official knight of Leen? Demitry replied, I know, but I'm not a replacement. Then he turned back and looked down, what are you looking at? Rennie followed his gaze and saw Willam vigorously practicing swordsmanship in the training ground. Is that Willam? Don't tell me he's... Demitry confirmed, yes, my lady, he has grown much older. She exclaimed, no, it can't be Willam, he's still... Demitry cut in coldly, still what? My lady, I went to the battlefield with the Earl when I was 16. And someone with eyes like his isn't easy to kill, is he? The housekeeper, Sarah, nodded and recounted, a few days ago, that boy broke the guard sword. He's growing so fast that I've had to mend his clothes 3 times already. Demitry continued to persuade her, you've heard it, Lady Rennie. If all Leen soldiers are summoned, there will be riots. Appoint the child as a knight and send him to Nadenton as a hired knight. Rennie hesitated before this decision, a silent gap stretched between them. Seeing this, Demitry reassured her, I know you care a lot about him, but don't hold anything other than a sword in his hand until the vengeance is over. In this backward territory, don't let the child ruin your plans. As Rennie remained silent, he thought to himself, you're still too soft-hearted. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the rumor that you stabbed the prince's foot and were imprisoned. My daughter, who bears the name Rennie, the official heir of the Lincoln family, isn't someone who can do such things. The Earl has bestowed upon her the highest position of any woman in this kingdom, so the people respect her. But perhaps, being overly protected, she wasn't taught how to become strong. Yet, that's the only way to protect Leen. Lost in thought, Demitry was taken aback when she asked, "Willam will truly become a knight?" "Yes, ma'am, basically," he replied. She furrowed her brows, muttering, "So exchanging 15 soldiers for him isn't enough money to hire a knight, but it's worth it, right?" Demitry widened his eyes in disbelief at the change in the girl he once knew. "Furthermore, we're doing this to preserve the life of Lord Nadenton's second son. If we only exchange for a few soldiers, shouldn't we take another piece of land?" Rennie's gaze turned sharp, "Like the Slayland marshes, for example?" She thought to herself, the muddy bog buried with treasure in the Slayland marshes is very valuable for this exchange. Willam, oh no, win krona, that's a worthy price for that title. The atmosphere once again became quiet, and Demitry chuckled, "Haha, indeed." He felt quite satisfied in his head. The Earl didn't bestow his title upon his daughter in vain. He knelt before her, obediently accepting the command, "I understand, my lady. Everything will be as you wish." In a cave in Leen, today was the weekly deer hunting day. Willam eagerly asked Demitry about the fairy tale the lady had told him the previous night. Of course, Hani hates Altia because Sir Hani always interferes and tries to make her sleep. But Altia loves Hani, replied Demitry to the innocent questions of the 16-year-old boy. Willam murmured the name Anilak and still wanted to know more about this Hani. Then he asked, "What happened after Anilak was born?" Demitry was surprised that a quiet boy like him was asking so many questions today. He slowly recounted, "Hani is the goddess of vengeance, so she's very busy because there are countless people praying for revenge. But after she gave birth to the child, she took care of Anilak for 100 days before handing the baby over to Altia. Altia's stronghold is quite far, so it took her 100 days to get there. And then she left Anilak without a hint of attachment." Willam curiously asked, "Is it because Hani doesn't like Altia?" Demitry, with a touch of sarcasm, replied, "That's right, but Hani loves the child she bore with so much difficulty. A lot. That's why she visits Altia's stronghold every year to see Anilak. And of course, Altia ignores her, because after all, Hani doesn't like men." Thinking to himself, Demitry chuckled lightly, "And Hani has 2 more children with Altia. This part should only be known to adults, right? But didn't Altia already have Hani? So, wasn't that good enough?" Willam murmured sadly. Demitry twisted the question back, "Good in what way? The woman he loves looks at him like he's vermin. How can anything be good in that situation?" Suddenly, Demitry seemed to realize something when Willam unconsciously muttered, "It doesn't matter to her. This kid, there's no way I don't know what he's reminiscing about." When faced with that huge deer, he showed extreme fear, his eyes were blank, and his hand holding the axe was trembling. But when I told him to chop off the deer's head, saying if you're afraid, the lady will starve, the deer's head was decisively severed. Yes, at that moment, and even before, whenever I looked into his eyes, I always felt that he only had Lady Rennie in his mind. I can't let a blind, ambitious, and cruel kid like him stay by her side. Grown-ups can't always be attached to their mothers like ducklings. Before that, you need to become a proper human being. Right at the time when the Imperial edict was issued, it's a good opportunity to separate him from Lady Rennie. Back to the present, Sarah was handing over the deed transferring ownership of the Slayland Marsh to her master, sent from Nadenton. She herself couldn't understand why she would accept such a worthless piece of land. To arrive on time for the conscription day, Leden's soldiers had to travel for 2 days. The soldiers participating in the campaign also had to prepare rations for this, so Rennie gave Demitry a valuable item to exchange for money to buy provisions. "Oh my lady," she exclaimed, "that's your mother's heirloom." This exquisite necklace was the only keepsake Rennie retained after the prince confiscated the Lincoln family's assets. She replied cheerfully, "It's all right, thanks to this, everything will be resolved smoothly. If only I had known, I would have treated my mother better." Sarah stood by and witnessed everything, bowing respectfully. Thank you sincerely, my lady. I will find a merchant to sell it immediately. As Sarah left, Rennie realized that she respected her as the Lady of Leden. After everyone left the room, Rennie breathed a long sigh of relief. Everything is finally prepared, now there's just one thing left. She ordered, "Stop hiding there, come in." Willam entered the study. He hesitated, not daring to approach the lady. Rennie noticed his unusual expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Willam blushed, "Because I haven't had time to bathe, so I smell a bit, ma'am." She replied with a smile, "It's okay, come here, I'm used to the sweat smell of nights." She remembered how her father used to, paused, then stopped herself from embracing him. His expression resembled that of her father's. But Willam misunderstood, thinking she was referring to Demitry. She joked, yes, it could be him, or it could be Demitry, but his sweat smell was even worse than her father's. As she stopped reminiscing, she realized Willam had been standing nearby for a while. He suddenly hugged Rennie from behind. "If you don't like it, I don't like it either," being familiar with Demitry's sweat smell. Rennie felt weary of Willam's single-minded ambition. She chuckled and teasingly asked him, "So, is this your sweat smell?" In Willam's heart, happiness bubbled up like a puppy being pampered by its owner. It's hilarious how I worried that Willam would be shocked to become a hired knight for Lord Nadenton. After all, to me, he's still just a kid. Thinking this, Rennie's heart squeezed with guilt. She felt awful for pushing a child like him into danger just for money. With a heavy heart, she softly apologized, "I'm sorry, Willam. Our territory only has 30 soldiers. If you join the battle, half of them will be gone, but the villagers might be protected from the wild beasts in the spring. But if you don't want to go..." She gripped Willam's arm tightly, despondent. "Can you understand my position?" Ultimately, she couldn't bear to be ruthless with her little pup. She held Willam's hand and said, "I can't help but order you to the battlefield because I'm the lady of this land, and I must protect the lives of the people here. Instead, I will pray for you. Every night when the moon rises before I sleep, I will pray and pray. So please fight for me." Rennie presented her father's sword before Willam and said, "This is my father's sword. He didn't have the chance to draw it before falling off his horse and passing away. It's very important to me, so I hope you'll return with it." The gleaming sword of the Leen family reflected a part of Willam's face, while Rennie's voice regained its composure. "Because I don't just want the prince's feet, but his life, even the life of Prince Michael Alesh, must be claimed by this sword." Willam's face became stunned upon hearing these words. She continued, "So you must return with the sword, right?" The boy replied firmly, "Yes, Rennie, I will return with it." Rennie smiled contentedly, "Thank you." But then he said, according to tradition, before going to battle, they always receive handkerchiefs from the girls. She teased, "Oh my, where did you hear that old story?" "In a book," he mumbled. "All right, for you, there's nothing I wouldn't do," she said, then decisively tore a piece of fabric from her sleeve. Willam couldn't help but be surprised. "Rennie, your dress." She wrapped the fabric around the sword hilt and said, "Take it, I don't have any handkerchief, so it's special, and I only have a few clothes." Willam was deeply moved looking at the green fabric on the sword, like a promise that wherever he went, he could feel her presence right beside him. He smiled gently and thanked her. 2 days later, under Demitry's urging, Rennie had to tear another piece of fabric from her remaining sleeve to wrap around his sword hilt. This made Willam very unhappy, but eventually, they, along with 15 soldiers, headed north. It was also the moment of victory after she stabbed Michael Alesh in the foot. Time flew by like a bullet. After Willam and Demitry left, the third summer flooded across the entire Leden territory. Lord Nadenton happily traded the swamp for Slayland. And then, just 2 months later, he regretted it when the packaged mud became a hit. The Earl sent an envoy and didn't hesitate to ask Rennie how she knew about the mud in the swamp. Of course, she had prepared an answer, stating that this information was written in a book compiled by the first empress of the Alesh Empire. Though she didn't know why the book was in Leen, at least it clearly noted the existence of mud in the swamp, with some mentions of obscure things like magic and dragons. But regardless, thanks to the money earned from selling the mud, Leen had completely transformed, and the winters in this land had become slightly warmer. As a result, over the past 2 years, no one had died from the cold. The rapid development of Leen quickly became known to the nearby people, and they migrated to this land to live. The shortage of soldiers was also quickly resolved. When everything became more abundant, Rennie gave many gifts to Mrs. Sarah. Initially she seemed reluctant to accept them, but Rennie persuaded her, saying that without this housekeeper, she would have had a very hard time during the pastime. The eyes of the people in the territory also began to change. They became more welcoming and open-hearted towards her after her contributions to the territory. Everything was smooth except for the fact that the war had not yet ended. Typically, the war with the barbarian tribe usually started in the spring and ended before midsummer, as they needed time to plant and harvest on their land. However, the battles continued relentlessly. It was because of Willam, who had killed the son of the tribal leader. Thanks to this, the Nadenton territory also received a huge war bounty, but the northern barbarians were extremely angry. They abandoned farming to continue fighting for revenge. But it wasn't in vain, and it was also because of Willam. Not yet 20 years old, he had defeated the barbarians like a seasoned warrior. Everyone called him the Mad Dog. His deeds caught the attention of Lord Lentia. He wanted Willam to work under him at any cost. But Willam had obviously refused and bluntly stated that he wouldn't change masters, which left the Count feeling regretful. In the study, Rennie was reading the letter sent by Demitry. Since Willam was always on the battlefield, it wasn't easy to communicate with him, so most of the situation updates came from Demitry. Apart from being reckless on the battlefield, he is a very skilled knight. But if he were not a knight but an ordinary soldier, it would be worse because he cannot live harmoniously with others. My first disciple is like this, it's really shameful for her, all because the Lord spoiled him too much. Do you know that? Rennie chuckled teasingly, blaming others again, huh? In the last letter sent in the spring of last year, Demitry said, the war seems to be nearing its end. 6 out of 7 tribal leaders of the barbarian tribe have died, and the tribes have been destroyed. Now they must pursue the great tribal chief to the end, so it will be even harder to communicate. I received a letter from my brother. I heard that my sister-in-law has given birth. After this dull war ends, I will take a break for a while. I have to see my nephew's face. Reading this, Rennie burst into laughter, maybe 3 days are enough. Suddenly, she noticed something inside the envelope, and there was something else stuffed in it. When she unfolded the piece of fabric, a message appeared every day, when I look at this sword, I think of you. The room fell silent. Rennie slowly bowed her head and shed tears of happiness. I miss both of you too. That evening, some news came through. The Lord of Leen, with a pained expression, delivered the news. Rennie couldn't help but feel dismayed. What did you just say? It can't be. It was the news of the death of someone she had long awaited. Speak, say it again, what did you just say? The messenger recounted, all forces were concentrated at the outer wall. However, the tide suddenly changed, and both sides focused their troops. Reinforcements couldn't reach the front base, where Mr. Demitry was guarding alone. Rennie grasped the corner of her dress, trying to reassure herself, it's a lie. It's all lies. The trembling messenger continued, upon hearing the news, Sir Willam quickly dealt with the barbarians in front of him and tried to rescue him, but he faced the great tribal chief. And so the battle lasted longer than expected. When his axe fell on his neck, the sun had risen. Fighting alone at the first base caused Mr. Demitry to lose his life there. Rennie hugged herself and cried out, Demitry. I mocked when reading that letter from Demitry, today, while he had died a week ago, huh? It's all deception. I laughed in happiness when reading the letter of the deceased. Rennie collapsed, screaming, it can't be. My childhood friend, both of them lay on the same bed and listened to my father's stories. My friend! In the end, only I am left. In memory, since I behaved the way I did in my life, it's because of me that Demitry died. Not long after, the people of Leen were overjoyed as their loved ones returned from the battlefield after months of separation. However, not everyone was fortunate. A coffin was brought in from outside the city walls, and everyone was stunned, especially when they saw Willam's face. Isn't that the child that the Lord favored so much? It seems so, and he looks terrifyingly different. He has been rolling on the battlefield for 3 years, so of course. Quiet! He's a knight now. Keep silent, he has wielded his sword vigorously on the battlefield to deal with the barbarians. Willam's footsteps suddenly halted as he widened his eyes upon seeing that girl. Rennie had descended to the square to welcome the returning soldiers. After years apart, now all he wanted was to immediately embrace her. Rennie! Demitry, she exclaimed, rushing past him like a gust of wind. This action left Willam utterly astonished. Rennie screamed and opened the coffin lid, but it was empty. There was nothing in Demitry's coffin, as his body could not be found. She fell to her knees on the ground in despair. The surrounding soldiers, seeing this, didn't know what to do, though they were also in agony. Despite her pain, Rennie tried to contain herself so others wouldn't see. She stood up and shouted loudly, "Listen up, everyone! Congratulations on returning after the arduous battle. Everyone will be rewarded according to their merits. Furthermore, I will provide free farming land for 10 years, and we will prepare a grand feast for everyone. Let's enjoy this happiness together." The entire village cheered and celebrated the victory, now that the war had ended. Everyone was happy, except for those two. At the cemetery, on a rainy day, Demitry's brother came to bid farewell to his younger brother. But he couldn't accept the fact that there was no body in his coffin. He died as a knight of Leen. He deserves to be buried here. Demitry chose you, and that's the consequence of that choice. The preparations for the end-of-war feast and the funeral made Rennie exhausted, despite the presence of Demitry's brother. And for some reason, the heir of the Grancia family also came, making her feel even more overwhelmed. Suddenly, Rennie remembered something. After 2 years on the distant battlefield, he fought like a madman for me, so I can't just... I need to see Willam, but before that, I need to change, she thought to herself. There was a knock on the door. Come in, Rennie assumed it was Sarah coming to help her in the evening. But as the footsteps gradually approached, a strange hand touched her. The zipper at the back of your dress seems to be stuck. I guess I was too hasty. As she was about to finish that sentence, she hesitated. A deep male voice interrupted, "Is it true that you're asking for my help?" Her face flushed. "Willam. You're here?" She couldn't help but be surprised. Kid, granted, 3 years ago I used to call him that, but now there's a man standing before me. No, I can simply call him a man. No, if I were to encounter a monster in the forest, would I need to guess whether it's male or female? She blushed. I didn't realize it was you. Come on. Suddenly, Rennie's foot twisted, causing her to stumble forward. In that moment, she realized how quickly the boy from before had grown up. In the past, Willam had been a scrawny little boy. He just stood there, silently observing her stunned expression. She recalled the things he had done for her, and choked up as she apologized. Willam guarded Demitry's coffin for 3 days straight. This was the first time he experienced a farewell. He endured so much, and She sobbed, "I truly apologize, Willam. Despite my determination, when I looked at Demitry's coffin, my heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. I neglected you like that, and it wasn't right." Willam simply responded quietly, "I'm okay. Just please say this to me, welcome back." Rennie struggled to hold back tears. "Beast? How could I ever think of such a good guy as a beast? She sobbed, "You've returned safely. Willam, I'm glad you're back." "I've missed you a lot," he said. "Me too, let's continue talking," she replied. "Rennie, you don't know how much I missed you. On the battlefield, every night, I only longed for you, Rennie." His earnest words left her flustered. The next day, this young man got up early to meet Rennie and offered 100,000 alans to bring Willam back under his military command. But she coldly retorted, "How is that enough?" This rejection left the young man completely embarrassed, not knowing what to do with her refusal of such a large sum of money. He is Farhan Grantia, the heir of the Grantia family, where the conflict with the Manhwa tribe occurred. Although the funeral had ended, he still tried to find excuses to stay here. "It's definitely a plot," Rennie thought cunningly. "It seems like the proposal to Willam failed, so he came to find me. Of course, I will also refuse." Rennie continued her attack. "Moreover, only 100,000 alans? Do you think that amount is equivalent to a knight who beheaded the chief of the Manhwa tribe before he even turned 20? Farhan, taken aback, respectfully doubled the price. "I don't like it, so I won't sell," Rennie asserted seriously. "If not, then lend it?" "Also not." "But doesn't Leen lack soldiers for Willam to command?" he tried to persuade. This made Rennie begin to get angry. "That's so rude." Farhan persisted, raising his voice. "If it's rude, then I'll continue to be rude. Even if the population increases, there are only 42 soldiers, and how can a capable knight like Willam only command in this small piece of land in Leen every day? If he comes to Glancia, in addition to the contract fee, Willam will be paid an extra 5,000 alans per year. Oh, I'll also give my sister to him, she's a beauty, she..." Rennie couldn't believe her ears. "What? Hold on, does that mean the Earl of Glancia already considers Willam his son-in-law?" She turned to him. "Willam, you..." Willam bluntly declared, "I don't care. Besides Rennie, I don't care about anyone else." Watching the young man from the Grantia family walk away in anger, Rennie sighed, "So those annoying people were under your command, huh? You must have had to deal with a lot of trouble." Willam responded, "But he's very famous on the battlefield, sir." "Is that so?" Rennie discreetly glanced at the young man next to her. "He seems like a different person from last night." So, she tried to ask further. "What about you? You look handsome like this, you must be popular with the female soldiers, right?" Willam exclaimed awe and blushed. He awkwardly replied, "No, I'm not." She looked at his adorable expression and burst out laughing. "You liar!" Then, suddenly, she reached up to his hair, and with a playful tone said, "It seems like your bangs have grown quite long, they'll poke into your eyes if you don't do something about it. Shall I cut them?" Before she could finish her sentence, Willam reached out, taking Rennie's hand. She was caught off guard, unable to react in time. He hesitated and said, "I always thought about your words and fought for them. You told me to survive and come back. So I kept repeating that phrase." She withdrew her hand cheerfully. "That's right, Willam, you did very well." He still held on to that hand, pulling it closer to him again, whispering, "I have returned as you said. I will always, always survive and return." His eyes were filled with affection as he looked at her. "Please give me a reward." Rennie, puzzled, asked, "A reward? What do you want?" Willam, mesmerized, just smiled gently. "It's a bit difficult to say now. I'll tell you next time. But I'll definitely do it. Before it's too late." He kissed her hand. "For sure. Before everything becomes too late." As the sun set, a fire ignited in the dark night along with angry curses. The young master of the Granada estate was outside with a close attendant named Anangol, setting up a tent and discussing Willam. It seems like he's trying to provoke our father, he said. He said he doesn't care about anyone except Rennie. I know he's a lunatic. Remembering the day Willam beheaded the son of man-eating tribes, all the soldiers celebrated except for the Earl of Glancia. Man-eating tribes was a rebellious group, only demanding food and goods for about a month. Their appearance when descending upon Glancia was an annual event in spring, causing no harm to either side. If we give them a few warehouses of food, they will disappear on their own. So our soldiers don't need to fight and shed blood. Instead, in the name of this war, we can command up to 10,000 soldiers. It's like a fair exchange. So everything is going smoothly, right? Top of form. When Farhan saw Willam, he frowned in disbelief because he was just a child. You're the one who killed the son of the chief? Willam replied coldly, yes. I heard we could have captured him, couldn't we? Glancia was angry. Yes? Is that all you can say? Farhan pressed his finger against his temple in frustration. You must know how valuable it is to keep hostages in war, don't you? But why did you insist on killing him in the end? Willam hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the sword of honor at his side, then unsheathed it and calmly said, that man, he touched my sword. The young master of the Glancia estate then noticed the sword carefully. It couldn't be mistaken. It was the mirror sword of Count Lincoln. Willam continued to explain, that scoundrel tried to steal my sword of honor. Surely you understand that's an unforgivable act? His eyes became fierce. To me, letting him live would be much more shameful. Farhan recalled that there was a deposed prince who had been exiled to Leen. That's why the knight standing in front of him had been hired from that territory. And that was why he had come to Leen Castle, to find a skilled warrior. Back to reality, Farhan felt disgusted. I never thought I'd be ashamed of my master. His attendant Anan asked, what are you going to do now, sir? Farhan, with his head in his hands, looked confused. I don't even know anymore. Should I bring out a picture of my sister and try again? Anan sighed, sir, do you know we'll never do that, right? Farhan exploded, then what should we do? Suddenly, they both stopped as they noticed a shadow approaching on horseback. Look! Who's that? Someone's coming, right? Farhan realized it was the person with black hair and eyes, a thin figure, and pale skin. None other than Willam. People often change after experiencing the ups and downs of the battlefield, witnessing bodies lying there several times, they gradually consider it as normal. While still fighting on the Glenna territory, Willam inadvertently heard the news that Prince Michael Alish had married someone new. A few soldiers standing nearby were chatting. They say in the capital, they're throwing a big celebration for 3 days straight, the atmosphere must be lively. Not like us in this chaotic place for a whole month. I bet the new princess must be beautiful, right? Of course, the prince kicked out his old wife already, didn't he? Just replacing one wife with another. The soldiers continued joking without noticing Willam behind them. She's the woman who crippled the prince's leg just because she heard people saying they should divorce. Their married life must have been so boring. But I heard she has a pretty face, not a virgin anymore, just need to marry someone. The group behind echoed, well, I should also hurry up and find a new candidate, a woman like that must scream loudly in bed. Oops. The soldiers were stunned and couldn't say a word when they saw the scene before them, a long sword thrust straight into the neck of a soldier. They were all horrified to see the wide eyes and blood flowing from his mouth. What the hell? A soldier was in extreme panic when he saw his comrade fall. The one who did the horrifying act was none other than Willam. He seemed like a mad beast, his eyes fierce as he approached his prey. Farhan's close aide, and then, witnessed the entire event. The soldiers were too shaken to speak and fell dead on the spot. The rest were terrified, shouting, what the hell are you doing, Willam? What the hell? Without much word, he swung his sword lethally at the long-haired soldier, then moved on to the next target amidst their frantic screams. Willam, like a madman, glared fiercely and shouted, "You filthy people!" They cried out in fear, "Ah! Run, run!" The crowd scrambled to escape, but couldn't escape the cold-blooded killer's sword. The sword swung repeatedly. Seeing Willam lose control, Demitry quickly intervened from behind. "Hey, you madman, what are you doing?" Willam didn't turn his gaze away as Demitry continued to shout, "They're allies. Glanatia soldiers, you know that, don't you? What are you doing?" Only the sword swung again, completing the deadline. Anzen stood frozen in horror, staring at Willam, covered in fresh blood. Willam spoke coldly, "They were sentenced to death for insulting the royal family." "Very persuasive. I like him." Back to reality, Anzen sat by the fire, but he still felt a chill as he remembered that moment. Seeing how deranged Willam was when speaking to his master, Anzen thought to himself that Willam's nature was already like that, not changed by the war. Suddenly, Anzen saw his lord, Glanatia, jerk and then call out in horror, "Anzen! What's wrong, sir?" Anzen, still lost in thought, replied. Anzen didn't understand what was happening. "What's going on?" he asked, as Farhan quickly went to fetch the horses. "No time for explanations, follow me quickly," Farhan said, leading Anzen away as the two disappeared into the dawn. At the mansion in Leen, Rennie groggily woke up after a long sleep. There was already bread on the dresser, as if someone had prepared it beforehand. "Huh, bread? Why is it here?" Suddenly remembering how he used to bring her bread every morning, she sighed, "Even though I'm grown up now, he still comes to the Lord's room. I guess I'll have to teach him how to behave with women again, rather than learning swordsmanship." Mystery. Lost in her thoughts, her mood suddenly darkened. Mystery, he's not in this world anymore. She muttered bitterly. "That scoundrel Michael Alesh has taken away another important person from me." She silently blamed herself, "If only I had stabbed him properly. If only I could go back." Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her, "If only?" And then what? She was surprised to see him standing there. "Willam, are you here?" Willam replied, "I was about to leave, but then you woke up." He approached Rennie and took her hand. "Did you sleep well?" Rennie blushed with embarrassment as Willam came too close for comfort, given her thin dress. She quickly covered herself, feeling ashamed. "Rennie, do you like land?" Willam smirked and then chuckled softly, ending with, "Well, I'll give it to you." "Huh?" Rennie was puzzled, not paying attention to Willam's words as she dismissed them as typical endearments from children to their parents. She accepted it eagerly as a sign of affection within the family. "All right, I'll wait for that time then," she replied happily. "Say, what if we take a stroll?" Willam hinted. "Go for a walk? Why all of a sudden?" Rennie reconsidered and realized that the weather today seemed pleasant, so she nodded in agreement. "Okay, but before that, give me some time to change. This is my room, after all." Before she could even step down from the bed, a female guard burst into the room and shouted loudly, "My lord, outside." Rennie hastily put on her clothes and followed the maid, feeling worried and uneasy. The guard pointed forward urgently, "Please hurry, that way." Rennie widened her eyes, "What is this?" A group of soldiers stood ready in the courtyard of the mansion. Willam's voice rang out, "I'm the one who brought them here." Rennie turned back in shock, "What?" All she saw was him smiling and replying, "Land, didn't you say you liked it? I've negotiated with them." Remembering last night at the campsite, Willam had proposed to the two of them, "Let me borrow Granatia's army." Here's the story, when Willam said that, Farhan was suspicious. "Is this a deal? Aren't you sneaking behind the back of the deposed crown prince to come here?" Willam paid no attention to those accusations and said calmly, General Man's tribe from the north is no longer, and he must be thinking about what to do with the 10,000 soldiers mobilized for this rebellion, right? Farhan, taken aback, responded, if Duke Lincoln were still alive, the royals would use his army to oppress Glenacia, but he's dead, and Lincoln's army is disbanded. From now on, the royals will weaken Glen at all costs, and it'll be lucky if it just ends with disbanding the army. Seeing Farhan losing patience, Willam went straight to the point, in that case, wouldn't it be better to defeat the empire and turn Glenna into an independent state? And then, hearing this, intervened and shouted, are you proposing a rebellion? Don't act like a model citizen of the empire anymore, Willam smirked. Farhan couldn't believe it. Is that what Demitry taught you? Willam sighed and replied, no, he's a good man and would never think of betrayal. If it were him, he'd propose negotiations with the royals instead. Farhan asked fiercely, so you intend to use Glenna's army to spark a war on this land? I will annex the entire northeastern territory for the Lord of Leden, Willam declared. Upon hearing this, Anan trembled, while Farhan felt the plan was ludicrous. How can we trust you and give away the soldiers of this land? Farhan questioned skeptically. Willam mockingly remarked, now I understand why they call you the Fox of Grancia, even in matters of courage. Farhan angrily interjected, what does that have to do with courage? It does, indeed. If successful, Glenna will become a powerful allied nation. I mean to establish control over a vast territory in the northeast through relationships with various lords. Are you still hesitant? Willam responded confidently. Farhan, still apprehensive, expressed his concerns, if we do that, we will surely be more closely monitored by the emperor. That's not an issue because when that happens, the surveillance will disappear, Willam nonchalantly replied. Anan, sweating profusely, trembled, what are you saying, sir? You're talking nonsense. Willam glanced at him and reminded Farhan, Anzan just sat there, feeling dejected, while they discussed matters. He didn't pay attention to what they were saying, just feeling miserable being scolded by them. Unaware of the conversation, all he saw was his master looking extremely panicked and shouting loudly, Anan, return to Glenna immediately. As the two hurriedly rode away, Willam remained calm and composed. Those were the secrets of Willam's gift for her. Remembering it, Willam revealed a cunning smile. Hurrah! The soldiers cheered throughout Leden. Willam grinned and asked her, aren't you happy? Rennie screamed anxiously, we don't have the money to feed so many soldiers. What are you doing? Willam chuckled, because you said you liked land, didn't you? Land? They're human beings. Rennie retorted. Still composed, Willam draped his cloak over her, Rennie, he gently called her name. Inwardly, Rennie was extremely worried. She and him had crossed paths many times, yet at this moment, his gaze was strangely different. Top of form. I know you don't trust me like Demitry. Willam continued. What? No, I didn't mean that. If you had as many soldiers as this, and it was Demitry, not me, you'd probably jump for joy, wouldn't you? Willam said, feeling dejected. Rennie was somewhat puzzled, but he continued, there's nothing to worry about when mentioning my teacher. Anyway, he's not here anymore. Rennie, I can't say I understand all your sadness and frustration. But look at Michael Alesh, who took Demitry's life from us. So let me be by your side, even if it means harboring hatred towards him. Rennie was touched by Willam's sincere words. Until now, she had always seen him as an innocent child, but she hadn't realized how much he had grown up. Willam continued his confession, I'm doing this to reclaim what belongs to you. It's just the beginning. Rennie withdrew her hand, feeling conflicted. I've never told you about this or about reclaiming anything. So if I want to get it back, it's something I have to do. But you wanted that through me, Willam replied. Rennie was deeply confused and stuttered in denial, you've got it wrong about that. Rennie, he gently called her, as if wanting to calm her down, but despite the bright smile on his face, Willam's every word felt like a sharp knife aimed straight at her. From the beginning, you intended to turn me into a tool. Rennie's breath felt suffocated, as if each exhale was being choked off. She could hardly believe that the boy she had raised was now confronting her with her own emotions. He continued, so no matter what I do, you'll always be the one who raised me. Your anger will be the thunder in the storm named you. The storm has its path, but the thunder only follows it. Of course, both won't depend on each other. Willam drew his sword decisively and stood before the ranks of Glenna soldiers, resolute. I'm just paving the way for you. I only hope that the path I've cleared will satisfy you. That summer, when Leen declared territorial war, everyone mocked. They thought that the deposed prince was a lunatic, using only a common knight who was just 20 years old to go to battle. May Denton was the first territory to surrender. They believed that the land only contained cowardly individuals, so they all mocked Lord May Denton for allegedly choosing the wrong side to stand on. But when the wealthy and vast territory of Del Marine also lost to Leen, they suddenly became silent and could no longer laugh. The Attain's empire did not intervene in territorial wars unless it affected tax revenues to the national budget. Furthermore, Leen's territorial expansion happened so quickly that the royal family could hardly perceive it in time. Therefore, before that winter ended, Leen had completely controlled 6 territories. The Eastern Expeditionary Force soldiers had no fear. Initially, this army had 1,000 soldiers, but now it had increased to 2,000, and rumors linking Lord Gaelmia to the war spread quickly. Some renowned lords expressed their dissatisfaction, but it was too late. From the east of Orion to Del Marine and Paula, all neighboring lords kneeled and surrendered. Leen's knights, also known as Leen's Mad Dogs, changed their nickname to Leen's Thunder. The territories that paid the highest taxes to the empire had now become Rennie's. In the palace, Prince Michael casually suggested it would be best to revoke the order to disband the army of Count Glenia and then order him to deal with Leen. That should do it, right? After this statement, the entire meeting room was stunned. The old king explained to the prince, half of Leen's army consists of volunteer soldiers from Count Glenia. What benefit do you gain by doing so? Does that mean those soldiers will obey Count Glenia's orders if summoned? The prince asked naively. The old king exclaimed, it means very likely that Count Glenia and the deposed prince are in cahoots with each other. Yes, so shouldn't we revoke the order to disband the army, seize the soldiers from that woman, and intervene in the relationship between Leen and Grancia? Michael always had such intelligence. He made the old king even more furious. How foolish to do it now. If we allow him to establish his army as he pleases, will he withdraw the soldiers currently in Leen? It will only increase the number of new soldiers and strengthen his military power. Michael looked clueless after being lectured, but he just frowned and avoided his father's anger. The old king, frustrated, exclaimed, I'm going crazy. I have only one son, and he's utterly foolish. He has no foresight in politics. Right from the start, that boy. If only we had intervened in the Sarawak rebellion from the beginning, things wouldn't be like this. A royal council member noted that Michael had become hot-tempered since his injury and didn't care about anything except his own proposals. The old king clenched his teeth helplessly. This is the Alan Empire, the nation I rule. A close advisor later suggested, Your Majesty, as far as I know, the Lord of Leen has won many battles since acquiring an exceptional knight. Let's summon him and directly accuse him. The old king grumbled, and then what? I've heard he's an unofficial knight, pretending to be one to join the battle. Normally, such individuals wouldn't be charged if they die on the battlefield. But that doesn't mean they're innocent. The old king continued, so what? Summon him to the capital and accuse him. In Leen, a letter from the royal court had been sent, containing an order to come to the capital and have an audience with the emperor. According to the letter, the king would ensure 2 conditions, restoring the title of Count to the House of Lincoln and returning the body of their deceased to Rennie. In that year, when Rennie thrust into Prince Michael's leg, the House of Lincoln suffered greatly, their titles and properties were confiscated, and all knights were ordered back to the royal court. The body of Count Lincoln was buried at a public cemetery outside the capital. Rennie silently understood these conditions were non-negotiable, tightly gripping the crystal in her hand, silently murmuring that finally, the time had come to get closer to that name, Michael, one step further. Unlike the day she was exiled to Leen, Rennie was ordered to pass through the Crystal Gate to reach the capital. The Crystal Gate, a magical device made of glass, allows users to instantly teleport from one location to another, a technology from ancient times. Magic once existed on this continent but gradually declined and disappeared over time. Queen Amorous Alesh, the founder of the Alesh Empire, created the Crystal Gate as the last sorceress of the continent. This gate was a creative product in the transportation method that brought prosperity to the continent, and only those of royal bloodline could directly pass through it. Others who wished to use the gate needed to carry a resonating crystal with them. Upon hearing this news, Rennie would carry the sword of the House of Lincoln through the gate. A guard appeared extremely stern because passing through the Crystal Gate meant abandoning weapons. Rennie stepped forward with determination, saying, "Count Molly, they are my trusted companions. I believe they will not cause any trouble." He still replied loudly, "But this is the rule for everyone who wants to pass through this gate." Rennie recalled passing through that gate when she was still the prince's wife. Upon arrival, the royal court would not appear immediately, and she was sure there would be about 2 soldiers waiting on the other side of the gate. Molly still seemed upset, "But my lord." Rennie interrupted, "Sir Moy, I have agreed to go to the capital through the Crystal Gate under the Emperor's order. But if the process is too complicated, I would rather ride a horse there." She thought to herself, Lord Molly is right to intervene, but everything must have its limits. Molly hesitated for a moment, then pointed directly at Willam and exclaimed, "But Lord Willam cannot carry a sword like that, sir. Without His Majesty's permission, one cannot bring a long sword to the capital. This rule applies even to the prince." Rennie responded firmly, "That is my father's sword. If you knew why I am going to the capital, you cannot take that sword away from my knight." After hearing this, Molly had nothing more to say, angrily leaving and reminding resentfully, "If that's what you said, then fine. I will wait at the main gate. After you're ready, bring the crystal stone." Rennie stood there, looking at him angrily and sneering, "Look at that temper." Suddenly, she noticed the young man beside Willam staring at her intently. He hesitated and said, "You protected my weapon, thank you." Rennie felt a bit embarrassed, deliberately avoiding and turning to instruct Sarah to take care of the territory while she was away. Everyone wanted their territory to expand, but in the past 6 months, Leen had grown so rapidly that an ordinary person could hardly handle everything. Willam had fought fiercely, so Sarah and Rennie had tried to manage the affairs after a series of consecutive victories. With the management system still unstable and the Lord having to leave, it was difficult for Sarah to stay and shoulder everything alone. Nevertheless, Sarah reassured her that she would return immediately after accomplishing her goal. "I still remember the day I met you. I'm not lying when I say I was very happy to welcome you here. You have brought so much to Leen, and it's time for us to support you. No matter how long it takes, just do what you need to do and come back in glory," Sarah encouraged. Rennie felt warmed by these words, sincerely grasping the woman's hand and replying, "Thank you, Sarah." Recalling the day she first set foot in Leen, she could not imagine what her life would be like. "Perhaps father tried to give me this opportunity to say don't give up, and I will never return," Rennie thought. "Willam," Rennie stepped towards him gently and said, "Yes, my lord," he replied. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "Before we leave, I have something to tell you." Remembering the day and the conversation at the fortress, Rennie had seen Willam differently. Sometimes leaning on his shoulder, she felt very reassured. But she knew Willam was no longer the child she once cherished. Although he pretended not to know anything on the surface, he was looking into her heart. Deep down, Rennie felt ashamed of his blind loyalty, which left her unable to respond. It was painful. Ever since Leden's victory over Delmarine, Rennie had only sat and listened to news of consecutive victories. Alan's war hero had never lost a battle. Rennie didn't even have the strength to manage the territories he offered her. Although she did nothing, Rennie didn't know when the vengeance had begun. "You must reward me," he demanded. "If so, then there is no other way than to give you a reward, right? But with such achievements, what can I give you?" Back to reality, Rennie looked him in the eyes and said, "We are going to the capital of the Empire. This journey is no different from venturing into a wasp's nest. But before we enter, I need to trust my knight completely. Let me trust you." Rennie reached out and placed her hand over Willam's chest, whispering, "You said you would avenge me for what they did to Demitry, right?" Willam immediately blushed at her gentle attitude. "I trust you, so I'll tell you a truth that I've never told anyone. You don't need the crystal stone to pass through that gate. Because the blood of the Allen royal family runs in your veins," he said. Rennie raised her head to look at Willam. "That's hard to believe, isn't it?" "Willam, you're the son of our emperor. We trust you, so please trust me," Rennie said, grasping his arm with hope that he would believe her, then continued, "I was very hesitant to reveal this. But this concerns you, so I think you should know." After a few minutes of silence, Rennie's heart became restless as Willam showed no reaction. Suddenly, she noticed something at his waist. "Oh, Willam, I tied it to your sword for you. It's necessary, right?" Willam startled, showing concern. "It's dirty and has royal blood on it." "No, it's not dirty at all," Rennie replied curiously, as it seemed she had wrapped it in thicker cloth, she thought. Willam tensed, sweating. "I'm sorry, I should return it to you, but I was too greedy." Rennie hugged him to comfort him. "It's okay, Willam. I'm glad you appreciate my gift." "That's right, no matter how much you've grown and changed, the child from back then will never disappear," Rennie said, releasing him and saying with determination, "I'm sorry for using you as a tool, but I gave you my father's sword. No matter who you become in this empire, no matter what you do or how your heart changes or leaves me, as long as you keep that sword, I will always trust you." "So, Willam," she said with a bright smile, "come back to me anytime, okay?" Willam blushed slightly, replying, "Yes, ma'am. I will definitely do that." In Rennie's heart, she still felt the fear of Willam's power, but she wouldn't repeat the past out of fear. Because in this life, he belonged to her. Willam blushed as she patted his head. He also had something to say to his lord. Rennie happily asked, "What's the matter?" Willam blushed and approached her, whispering, "I already know that I am the son of the emperor." Rennie widened her eyes in disbelief. What else did Willam know and hide from her? Stay tuned for the next episode by liking and subscribing to the channel. "I already knew I'm the son of the emperor," Rennie heard him say, and she was immediately stunned. "What?" she exclaimed, her eyes widening in disbelief. Confused, she pushed him away and shouted, "What are you saying? How is that possible? Since when did you know? Since when?" Willam took hold of her hand to calm her down. "Rennie," he whispered, pulling her close, "I can't tell you yet." Still in a state of bewilderment, Rennie heard a call from the door urging them, "My lord, Anen Stog has arrived. You must depart." Anson felt embarrassed at the scene and apologized for being late. Rennie blushed in embarrassment. Why now? She turned to follow them. "All right. Let's go." "Well, it seems difficult to continue our conversation now, doesn't it?" Willam chuckled softly as he walked past her. "We'll talk later when we have the chance." Rennie stood there, still perplexed, unable to fully comprehend what he had just revealed. In the lush green forest, the sound of the escort's horse hooves echoed, clip-clop. As they rode, Rennie thought about Willam, so that's it. All this time I'd been wondering why Farhan Grancia was willing to lend so many soldiers. Turns out he wasn't lending free army troops, but Willam was offering himself in exchange, thanks to the blood running through his veins. That also means all of Leden's actions are related to the Imperial family. The Emperor has nothing to worry about because Michael is his only bloodline, and with his advanced age, he cannot have any more children. If that fool Michael is the only crown prince at the moment, the appearance of another contender for this position would surely delight the Emperor. Willam glanced at her thoughtfully, causing Rennie to jump slightly, quickly turning away. Her embarrassed expression momentarily deflated his demeanor, but the awkward atmosphere was soon broken when the attendant loudly announced, "We've arrived, my lord." The glass gate emitted a beautiful blue light. The cowboy had been waiting for them for a long time. He politely greeted, "Welcome, everyone. Now that we've all gathered, let's begin the journey. Just hold the resonance stone and walk through. Follow me." Rennie and Willam led the group as they slowly approached the gate. But before stepping through, Willam called her back, "Rennie." What is it?" she asked. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, "I haven't told you what reward I want from you, have I?" Caught off guard by his intense gaze, Rennie hesitantly responded, "Oh." Gripping the corner of her dress. She hesitated, "Sorry, Willam, can you repeat that?" Feeling anxious about the demand from the young man, Willam gently replied, "I have returned as promised, and even in the future, I will survive and come back. So please reward me," he solemnly reminded her of the promise made years ago. Rennie asked again, "Reward for what?" A guard, seeing her pause, urged, "My lord." Rennie quickly replied, "Oh, all right then," as she hurried to catch up with Willam, quietly asking, "What reward? What do you want?" "I have nothing to give you." Willam smiled gently, "Just give yourself to me." Rennie skipped a beat upon hearing that, her mind becoming blank for a moment. What?" she stammered. Willam continued, "It's what I've wanted from the beginning, and no matter when, it's always been just you, Rennie." Rennie's entire body chilled with astonishment. She retorted, You're talking nonsense. Let's go, everyone can hear us right now." Still feeling dazed, Rennie watched as Willam reached out and touched the surface of the glass gate. He calmly said, "I don't care, Rennie. I love you." Blushing and feeling embarrassed, Willam looked at the girl and added, "I only love you." Meanwhile, in the prince's private chamber in the palace, Michael called out to his new wife, "Jolly Cinia, I'm not feeling too well." She hesitated, "Should I massage you with essential oils?" "I just received some jasmine orchid essence." Michael waved his hand, "No need, it's too hot anyway. Just wash my feet." She obeyed and carried out his command. Jolly Cinia hailed from a small country called Canaria. When she was brought to the Attain's empire, she was only 12 years old. The final gift that her homeland bestowed upon her was odorless, tasteless poison for the emperor's prisoners. They were often held captive in some desolate palace, sometimes even forced to work by the palace staff. Similarly, Jolly Cinia endured 10 years living in this strange place, so there was no way she would easily fall into love with anyone. As Jolly Cinia wiped Michael's old wound, he suddenly snapped, "Stop it." She raised her face to hear his uncomfortable words, "Don't use so much force. Be gentle with your hands." "Yes, sir," she replied, enduring with a gentle expression. Every time his foot hurt, the crown prince would make his new wife wash his feet. Suddenly, he announced coldly, "That woman will come tonight." Jolly Cinia's hand paused. That woman. And who else but that damned woman, Rennie? Hearing that name, Jolly Cinia briefly recalled what she had done back then. Because she intervened in the salt import affairs from Sarawak, it led to Rennie stabbing the prince's foot with a sword. Michael saw her with a distressed expression and felt uncomfortable. "I apologize, my lord. Because of me, you were..." She stuttered, avoiding his gaze. Michael patted her head and comforted her. "It's not your fault. I'm just not happy thinking about that woman." He thought to himself, Jelly Cinia is indeed cautious, unlike Rennie, his ex-wife with that provocative demeanor. Michael clenched his fist and shouted, "I hate that woman. I want to kill her. I thought after leaving here, she would fall prey to bandits in the mountains or freeze to death. But she's still alive out there, rescued by some unknown person." His eyes turned fierce, and now she suddenly becomes a great lord? And she's shameless enough to come to the capital. He gritted his teeth. "I'll make her regret it for the rest of her life. I'll make sure her arrogant head is hung at the city gates." Then, he changed his tone and smiled at the beautiful girl beside him. "Right, bring that thing here and open it." A finely crafted gemstone necklace appeared, with a stone matching Jelly Cinia's eye color. She was extremely surprised. "This is for you, so I prepared it. Wear it at the reception this afternoon." Jelly Cinia hesitated, "But, my lord, at the lord's reception." Michael interrupted, "Normally, the prince's consort cannot attend such gatherings. But it's okay. First, I have to crush that woman's arrogance." He clenched his teeth, because her status should have her crawling on the streets' heads. You, as a princess with noble lineage, should not allow her to compare to you. From the beginning, she stole the position of the prince's consort that rightfully belongs to you. Let her see that directly." She bowed her head without saying a word, the answer given as someone who would live a lifetime as a mere shadow, always and forever. "Yes, sir." She replied to her husband most sincerely. At the reception, Jelly Cinia wore a sparkling crown and the exquisitely designed gemstone necklace. But her face still showed traces of insecurity and restlessness. Michael reminded her, "Look up. Jelly Cinia, you're the wife I chose. Don't be so timid." She replied, full of concern, "Yes." The old king glanced at Cinia. He snorted and turned away disdainfully, then said, "Summon Lord Leden and the Knight Squadron." The servant's voice echoed, "Yes, sir." The front door slowly opened. Michael focused his gaze there, reminding his new wife, "Now watch carefully. See how that woman looks so pathetic after losing her husband to you." Before he could finish his sentence, what appeared before him was an extremely shocking scene. "What the hell is this? What is this?" Jelly Cinia thought to herself. She used to be just a little princess forgotten in this Attain's country. As Cinia saw the former prince's consort for the first time in real life, she was astonished. "Rennie, that woman looks truly elegant and noble." Just like many other girls surrounding Rennie, Cinia was drawn to her sky-blue eyes, her golden hair shining like the sun, and her dignified demeanor. At that moment, Rennie noticed Cinia wearing a crown and a gemstone necklace. These items adorned her, despite her having blue eyes and hair as silver as the moon. But ultimately, it was the sunlight reflecting off her face that made her shine. Remembering the day Rennie was humiliated and went mad, stabbing Michael with a sword, Jelly Cinia involuntarily touched the necklace around her neck, silently blaming herself. "It's because of me that that woman lost everything. And now I have to meet her again in this situation." Lost in thought, Cinia didn't notice Michael trembling with anger. "That woman has gone crazy." As the two slowly entered the palace, he gritted his teeth, muttering each word, "So arrogant." Cinia also trembled in horror when she saw that face. Rennie's eyes seemed to devour her. However, that was just Juna's imagination. Rennie calmly approached in a black mourning attire, not needing any makeup to look beautiful. As they drew closer, Cinia became more anxious. "She's coming. She's looking at me." While Rennie remained calm in her inner fear, she was glaring, uttering each word, "I will regain everything you stole from me and my father's dignity." Jelly Cinia was trembling so much that Michael had to put his hand on her shoulder to reassure her. I told you to calm down. Forgive me, she could only mutter. On the golden throne, the old king looked at the two fools with disdain. This situation made him scratch his head with much deliberation. But he truly respected Rennie for what she had built in that remote and poor place, threatening even his throne. His purpose in calling her was to congratulate her on becoming a great lord, wanting her to see it as a great honor. But it seemed like things wouldn't be easy. He looked at Rennie, who came here with that appearance, unadorned and unmade up, as if humiliating the royal family. But he knew her true purpose in accepting this offer. Rennie was wearing mourning attire for her father, indicating that she wanted the royal family to return her father's remains. A courtier carefully raised his voice, Your Majesty, the esteemed and revered ruler of Alan, this is the Lord of Leden. The old king replied, Come forward, Viscount Rennie Felden. She also solemnly bowed, It's an honor to meet you, Your Majesty. Viscount Felden, please raise your head. Rennie didn't obey the king's command, maintaining her posture. This reaction made the old king somewhat uncomfortable. I deliberately lowered her status by addressing her as a viscount, but it seems Rennie intends to imply that she's here to reclaim the title of the Lincoln Marquess. Rennie extended her hand to introduce, This is Willam, without a surname, but he has been actively serving as a temporary knight for Viscount Felden. Listening to the introduction, the old man thought to himself, She's foolish to think that the emperor will reinstate that title. However, Willam's greeting caught the old king's attention. He raised his head, radiating vigor and strength. This made the old king feel somewhat curious about this young man. It is also an honor to meet you, Your Majesty. A courtier standing nearby seemed eager to diminish Willam's importance. So you're Willam? I've heard of you. How old are you? His uncomfortable question was met with solemnity. I am 20 years old this year, sir. The old king paused upon receiving that answer. Oh, you're young but already so skilled. Several hypotheses emerged in the old man's mind. You're too kind, Your Majesty, Willam calmly responded. But why don't you have a surname? The old king's next words were less discomforting. Rennie quickly replied for Willam. His external family was massacred in a raid by a barbaric tribe, and his mother passed away after giving birth to him. The old king still had one last question, but at least there must be a father, right? Is there a marriage certificate? Rennie bluntly said, This is not a matter to be discussed in this hall, sir. If overlooked, it would be a disgrace to an entire family. The room fell silent after her words. The king-father wiped his sweaty forehead, and the rest didn't understand what they were talking about. The story didn't seem to align with the negotiation they needed to focus on. A few seconds later, the old king suddenly addressed her by her former prestigious title, Marquess Lincoln. This call surprised both Michael and June Cinia greatly. He turned to look at his father with a puzzled expression, but the old king continued speaking as calmly as possible. There are few who are called Grand Lords in the Empire, especially the return of the territory of Marquess Lincoln must be delicately and quickly negotiated. An hour later, come to my garden, and we can enjoy tea and talk properly. Rennie understood the old man's intention. She replied respectfully, I understand, Your Majesty. The old king continued to invite her and Willam to the welcoming banquet of the new Grand Lord. This made Prince Michael couldn't help but ask, What exactly is going on, father? Is returning the territory just a bait? We've decided to control that woman and kill the knight. But why does everything turn out like this? He shook with anger, silently cursing Rennie. He no longer paid attention to his new wife Cinia, who was watching Willam's departing figure. In her heart, Cinia felt a bit of sweetness towards the handsome and strong-willed young man. She stood still for a moment, as if the princess who had lived like a faded shadow in the palace that day was stirred by this young man. She blushed and smiled softly. Willam, that man looked at me and smiled. Meanwhile, Rennie stepped out of the room, secretly rejoicing. Finally, we meet again, Michael Alesh. His legs are now trembling, and his life must be miserable. My previous life was like that, and I've returned to take revenge on him. I will end your life, Alan. I will show you what hell is like. As she walked, Rennie pondered on how to please the old king in the tea party happening in an hour. First, the king needs to recognize Willam as his new son. Lost in thought, she only realized Anson was calling her. He wanted Rennie to show him something. The price for lending soldiers to Glenna was for her to provide evidence of Willam's identity with a glass gemstone. But right now, Rennie needed to keep it to present to the king at the tea party. This needed to be conveyed meaningfully and avoid the scrutiny of the public eye. So she simply left Anson with a cryptic statement, "Amorous blooms in season." He was puzzled by her words. Amorous is the name of the first emperor, and that flower is also drawn on the royal crest. She says it blooms in season, meaning she will offer something even more valuable than a glass gemstone to prove Amorous's identity. It's strange, she always says incomprehensible things like that. But he nodded in agreement nonetheless. Rennie felt quite exhausted from her encounter with Michael and the court formalities. Willam stood by her side, gently asking, "Rennie, there's a room prepared for the Lord, go there and rest." "How did you know about that?" she asked, curious. "Because I've been in many battles, I've learned to pay attention," Willam chuckled sheepishly, blushing like a puppy wagging its tail. Aizen, witnessing the warm scene, shuddered. "It's rumored that the Lord of Leden has fallen for a young knight, so it must be true. Well, I just want to quickly receive the glass token and go home." Willam approached and opened the door courteously, saying, "Rest now." "Thank you, Willam," Rennie said, looking at the glass token in her hand, full of unease. This token could only be used once, and after passing through the glass gate, it would shatter into pieces. But it remained intact because of Willam. This evidence showed something certain: Willam was a member of the royal family of Alan. Rennie tightly grasped the token with the belief that with it, she would gain the Emperor's trust. Lost in thought, suddenly Willam knelt before her. "Rennie, can I accompany you to the tea party? You never know, someone might be trying to harm you. Right now, using force is the best way to destroy Leden. If you, as the Lord, were assassinated, Leden Castle would collapse, and we would need to be prepared in case the Emperor decides to kill us." Rennie hesitated. "Did Demitry teach you these things?" "No, I realized it on the battlefield," he lightly laughed, countering his own words, "but I think the likelihood of the Emperor assassinating us is very low." "Rennie, it seems the old man really likes me." She was puzzled by Willam's straightforward words. "I think so too," she replied, feeling a bit sorry, then asked him, "Willam, do you expect that, to become the Emperor's son?" "I don't know either, Rennie. This matter is too complicated, so I'm not sure," he became sincere. Rennie playfully pinched his cheek, pretending to be annoyed. "Why are you joking now?" Willam smiled faintly. "I'm not joking." He confidently rested his head on her soft thigh, then softly said, "Rennie, help me decide. Right now, I just want you to kiss my forehead." Rennie immediately blushed. "Oh. Damn it, I remember that moment again. My mind went blank and I didn't know how to react." Willam withdrew a bit and became serious. "You should go outside or do something." "I need to rest." Rennie was embarrassed and quite tired, needing to escape this awkward situation. Alone in the room, she lay on the bed, thinking to herself, "It's difficult to think, I don't know what to do with him." In the palace's flower garden, the old king had been waiting for Rennie since morning. "Come here, Countess Linlken," he said gently. Seeing the king address her as Countess, Rennie was quite pleased. Perhaps he didn't intend to behead her immediately. Willam helped her sit in the chair. The old king glanced at him. "All right, your name is Willam, isn't it? I heard there's someone in Leden nicknamed Thunder. You sit too." Rennie was surprised by the king's sudden kindness to a lowly stranger. If she had known about this opportunity earlier, she would have carefully groomed Willam for the palace rituals. But contrary to her worries, Willam behaved exactly as she hoped. The old king placed the teacup on the table and began, Count Limilkin, although our relationship has been strained after regrettable incidents, let's forget the past. I won't prolong this, I'll be straightforward. I will restore all the rights of Count Limilkin, except what has been granted to Michael. Your family's land and property will also be returned to you, including your father's serfs. But before that, can you show me the birth certificate of this knight from your house? Confidently, Rennie replied, Of course, Your Majesty, I'll have it delivered to you directly. She had prepared for this moment. Rennie handed the birth certificate to the king. But it's just a fake. The real important thing is this glass token. Watching the scene between the king and Lord Leden, all the courtiers whispered, What's going on? She seems to be returning as the king's daughter-in-law. Ignoring the whispers, the old king smiled contentedly, Well done, you've returned to the capital. When the old king received the birth certificate and the glass token, the secret transaction was completed. With this deal, Rennie gained special trust from the emperor. In a luxurious room in the palace, the warm fire was roaring. Rennie lay on the bed, lamenting, Today has been a long day, there's so much to do, and it never ends. Willam said, I heard I'll be officially knighted at the feast. If so, I need to prepare clothes for both you and me. Rennie was puzzled, how does he know about that? Even earlier, the way he behaved ceremoniously with the emperor, I should ask him. She sat up and ordered the servant, Go out for a while, I want to talk to Willam alone. Seeing this, he asked, Is this okay? Rennie, if you're alone with a man at night, others will gossip about you. Rennie cheerfully replied, Haven't people been gossiping that we can't be separated? Willam, unable to refute, became annoyed. Fine, but I've raised you since you couldn't even speak, so to me, you're more like a spoiled child than a woman. Willam became frustrated and angry, intending to leave the room. But before Rennie finished speaking, Willam's steps approached. He leaped onto the bed and pushed her down. Did you call me a child? His cheeks reddened momentarily from her teasing. Rennie held back a laugh. I understand, Willam. I've been embarrassed before, too, when my father called me his little apple pie. I'm sorry for teasing you in front of Michael. Willam still felt a bit annoyed. It's not about that. She cheerfully reassured her companion, It's okay, really. People often talk behind my back anyway. Willam hesitated for a moment, his cheeks still flushed, awkwardly telling her, We're only 8 years apart in age. Right, she agreed with a smile, acknowledging her young suitor's concerns. Willam persisted, I'm serious. But Rennie just chuckled nervously and changed the subject, saying, There's something more important though, how did you learn about your lineage? With a serious expression, she looked at him. He suddenly covered her mouth, Willam's emotion still complex, both gentle and irritated. Do you know what, Rennie? Kids usually hate being grilled by their parents like that. He then left the room, leaving her alone. She fell silent, feeling a bit disheartened. I'm sorry, Willam. Because you're the only one who knows me as I am, it's natural that you might think I'm fond of you. But because you're my only card, I can't bind you with such fragile affection. If you knew it was ephemeral, here one moment and gone the next, then you would understand me. Outside, Willam sat grumpily on a stone bench. He loosened his collar and thought to himself, shouldn't I have confessed then? Suddenly, in the distance, someone called out, Hey! It was June Sinia, strolling with a maid. She blushed as she saw the man she liked again. Willam glanced towards her. Then suddenly, with an expression devoid of any emotion, he kneeled on the grass and respectfully greeted, I am Willam of Leden. The maid, wary, pointed her sword towards him, shouting, This is the flower garden where the princess walks every evening, leave. This is my residence, where should I go? Willam retorted calmly. The maid rebuked, how insolent. A common knight dares to. Sinia chuckled softly, restraining her maid, Gilia, this person just entered the palace today, so they may not know. Is that so? I apologize, Cinia said, shooting a shy glance at Willam, her admiration evident. Her cold and defiant eyes, how could such an arrogant man kneel before her? Her heart became even more chaotic, her cheeks flushed. She was indeed a very beautiful girl. Seeing Willam's annoyed expression, she continued to scold him. Cinia intervened gently for the first time, turning to Willam, this place is close to the palace where I used to stroll, so I come here occasionally. But tonight, I forgot there was an important guest, so I'll leave now. But walking here is my only pleasure, so in the future, could you leave at this time of day? The rustling of leaves echoed in the moonlit night. June Cinia's heart was now in turmoil because of this man. Willam's black eyes scanned her figure. This made her even more excited. Willam suddenly smirked, agreeing, I understand. June Cinia's eyes widened as if receiving her favorite gift, that young man has agreed to my request. With satisfaction and a sparkle never seen before on her lovely face, she turned and left with her maid, Gilia, let's go. A few steps away, she took something out of her pocket and pretended to accidentally drop it. When Willam stood up, he saw it was the handkerchief she always carried. A handkerchief? He picked it up and looked towards the two women who were gradually leaving. But Willam could clearly feel her entire body warming up because of him. He took the handkerchief and grinned mischievously, what a quiet night it is. 2 days later, at the royal palace, the organization of the welcoming feast for the new Grand Lord was completed. All the knights attending the banquet were dressed in beautiful and latest attire. The only one left without a new outfit was Leden's lord. But she didn't need it. What was more important was that she wanted to meet Azin. He quickly appeared with a friendly face, while Anzin looked expectant, thinking this time she would give him something from Amaris, and he could return early. However, was that she wanted to meet Azin. He quickly appeared with a friendly face, while Anzin looked expectant, thinking this time she would give him something from Amaris, and he could return early. However, before that, Rennie said she needed his help, this is personal information someone is looking for, she said. Anzin was puzzled, who is it that you're looking for? I know you didn't attend the banquet, so I asked for your help. Please rest and look for that person in the capital, she said. Anzin looked helpless, and could Rennie read his thoughts from that helpless expression? She's not giving me the water stone, but also entrusting me with a task? However, this matter was important to Rennie. The person she was looking for was the one capable of managing all the business of Hyalka's territory when she lived in her previous life, and he had come to the capital. She remembered this information. She folded her arms and replied, Mrs. Sarah is old and has no business experience in Grand Lord's territory. That person is a talent we've seen in the capital before. So, if you're free, bring him here. If Leden is to become stronger, we need him. Anzin was reluctant but had no choice but to obey the orders. But I have to say again, I belong to Glenna's house. So, everything I do has to be reported to the Glenacia Lord, he said. Rennie waved her hand and smiled lightly, I know, hurry up. After all, she designated him for this task to make it convenient for him to inform that old man. So the Glenacia Lord could see Rennie as a capable person. She had to let him know that Leden, even without Willam, could still be strong. Well, mentioning Willam, her heart was extremely conflicted, emotions in turmoil, it's been 2 days since I left the room like that, and I haven't seen him. She sat on the bed and sighed, I gave Willam time to settle his feelings. And if Willam changes his mind and leaves, I have to prepare everything to make sure nothing is disrupted, even without him, because this is my own revenge. Lost in thought, Rennie didn't notice the door to the room was opening. She was immersed in her own world, murmuring softly, ah. At times like this, I wish there was someone I could trust by my side. Rennie remembered Demitry, a very close friend who had grown up with her since childhood, and imagined, what will he say to me? She muttered, Demitry. Willam stood outside the door, overhearing and imagining the memories that she had shared with Demitry. Images of their teenage years that Demitry had recounted flashed through Willam's mind. When we were 18, I proposed to Rennie, Demitry had said. Of course, Willam imagined Demitry saying, I will fulfill my duty, my lady Rennie. These thoughts raced through Willam's mind. Demitry! Her voice echoed, sorrowful and filled with bitterness when she called his name, as if trying to drive Willam mad. Damn it! He bit down hard on his teeth, suppressing the anger rising within him. Willam pushed the door open without a word. This action left Rennie slightly confused. What's wrong with Willam? I haven't heard from him in 2 days, she wondered. He tersely asked her if she had met Farhan's close aide. His expression clearly showed jealousy. He dismissed both the aide and Mac from the room, leaving only him and her alone. Willam, she crossed her arms, facing him directly, her expression accusing, you truly resemble that heir, don't you? Wyndham hesitated and quickly apologized. She ordered, close the door, if you want to show your loyalty, then speak up now. I would gladly address you as your highness. Willam hesitated, no, it's not like that. But remember, a prince cannot be my husband, and from the moment I call you your highness, you can no longer be a part of my family or anything else, she clarified. Willam stood stunned, his heart wrenching as he exclaimed, Rennie, why are you like this? Do you know I didn't do it just to make you call me your highness? Rennie coldly replied, to intervene in every aspect of the sovereign lord's affairs, one must become a prince, isn't that so? Willam didn't know what else to say, feeling shaken, he hastily apologized, I'm sorry for everything. In her familiar demeanor with him, he became a pitiable dog scolded by its master. Rennie stopped her cold words and asked, what's that in your hand? Because you need to prepare jewelry for the banquet, so. Before he could finish, Rennie snatched the box away. Give it to me, it's not the time to talk about jewelry. Willam, let's talk about something important. Today is the day of the banquet, yet you've been avoiding me. Is it because I rejected you? The sounds from her mouth left him dazed. She continued, I need you to take revenge on Michael Alesh. I've been alone for a long time, really long. He clenched his fists to control his emotions and asked, isn't Demitry by your side? He hesitated, his tone resentful, wanting to say something more. But Rennie denied, no, I've truly been alone. Do you not believe me? Willam quickly replied, no, it's not like that. I believe everything you say, Rennie. So what? She looked at him seriously. But I can't trust you. Even though you say you love me, you hide your secrets from me and don't behave honestly to win my heart. So how can you confess to me? His involvement in the capital was beyond her expectations. If Rennie had laid the groundwork more slowly and aimed at Michael after he ascended the throne, it would have been different. But because Willam had intervened in everything, the plan was ruined. Now Willam said, don't you ever think about devoting feelings to me? No matter how hard I try to help you, you still won't let me get close to you. Am I just a tool to you? What can I do for you? Rennie replied, Willam, it's not that you love me, but you desire a toy that you don't have. Rennie, he exclaimed in surprise and pain. But she continued, or let me put it more bluntly. Actually, accepting your clumsy affection is not difficult for me. Scoot, a swift and gentle movement, and Willam was suddenly pushed down onto the bed. He had never seen a Rennie whom he loved do such things. The surprise was extreme when she unbuttoned her shirt, revealing herself in front of him. Like everyone says, if necessary, I can do that with you any time. My only weapon now is you. So if you want me right now, let's do it. Instead, I can't offer you anything other than this body. Willam gripped the bed tightly, trembling with chaotic emotions, while Rennie challenged, how do you plan to do that? In Rennie's mind, she was just thinking if her pet were to show its fangs to its master, it would make the chains that bound it even stronger. And she said, choose now. Will you accept my terms? Or will you stay with me as before? Willam's heart pounded wildly. He frowned, trying to control himself as she became more seductive. Suddenly, Rennie jerked as she felt something creeping under her feet. Willam spoke softly, "So after the revenge is over, can you love me?" He straightened his jacket and adjusted her clothes. "I'll tell you something, by pushing you away like this, I'll show you a stronger trust than anything else, Rennie." Willam's quiet yet earnest voice left her dumbfounded. "I love you," his eyes filled with determination and sincerity. "I'll do anything to have you completely, even if it means pushing you away like this." Rennie blushed, and her heart began to flutter. It truly throbbed for Willam, unlike the firm embrace of Demitry when she fell from the tree or the 2 nights she gave herself to Michael in the past. At this moment, with Willam, it was completely different and new. Rennie forgot all the anger and estrangement between them over the past few days. She reached out and touched his lips and his happy face as they sank into love. Willam hugged her back, as if reciprocating all those actions. "Well done, Willam," his appreciation for her made Rennie sure that they couldn't go back to how they were before. In the palace, footsteps echoed into a room. The door swung open, revealing Michael sitting on the bed while June Sinia washed his feet. "Ah, you're here, my queen!" The woman exuded the dignity of this empire's queen, mother of the crown prince. When she heard that her son was unwell, she rushed here immediately. She appeared very contemptuous of her new daughter-in-law, who had just slithered over to her son's side. She deliberately caused June Sinia to startle and fall to the floor. Yet, Michael remained calmly conversing with his mother, paying no attention to June Sinia sitting on the floor amidst the shattered glass, listening to her speak ill of Rennie. "My Michael, is it because that woman returned to the capital that you're so irritated? But don't worry, in this empire, only Michael is the seed that can become emperor. Even if that filthy thing is Lord Leen, in the end, it's Michael who will become emperor." Grasped her son's hand reassuringly. "I also want to kill that woman like you do. Just wait a little longer, and when I have her in my hands, you can play with her as you please. So, endure a little longer. If our Michael becomes emperor, we'll show that wretched woman what hell is like." Her face twisted into a sinister and cruel smile as she sneered at the thing sitting on the floor. Sinia was picking up the shards of glass, aware of her gaze, but not daring to look back at the person cursing at her. "Useless thing!" The queen's curse made her startle. June Sinia looked back at the remaining shattered pieces in her trembling hands, suppressing the pain from the cut. Despite the dreadful times they were going through, the banquet proceeded as planned. Even those who mocked Rennie from afar were busy considering their allegiance to Lord Leen. And then came the formal knighthood ceremony for Willam. He reverently knelt down to receive this honor from the king. Queen C looked at Willam closely. Suddenly, she seemed suspicious because his face seemed so familiar, yet she couldn't remember where she had seen him before. "The shining sword of the empire is bestowed upon Willam Kron." Hearing these words from the king, Queen C was immensely shocked. How could it be? Bits of her memory slowly surfaced. A minor noblewoman from the outskirts dared to have a child with the emperor? Burn the entire Kron family and let no one survive. Those words came from her mouth at that time. Back to reality, she looked at that young man in disbelief. Willam, the descendant of the Kron family? How? The queen completely collapsed, unable to accept this shocking truth. Meanwhile, amidst the confusion, King Michael, unaware of what was happening, asked, "Mother, what's wrong?" Although knowing her mother's reaction, he remained coldly detached from her distress. She cried bitterly, "How could you do this to me? Betrayal!" The queen moaned in agony, collapsing into her son's arms. This further confused Michael. "Mother, what are you talking about?" She cried through warm, resentful tears. "Krona is the name of the woman who betrayed the emperor." Michael was utterly stunned. June Sinia, who was nearby, heard every word. But instead of feeling devastated like the mother and son, she was elated and excited. "Willam is the emperor's son?" The hall in the palace remained lively, enjoying this celebration feast. Meanwhile, a courtier called Rennie to another corner per the king's instructions. Both she and Willam followed. The old king stood ready outside the balcony, patiently awaiting their arrival. "You call for us, your majesty," Rennie said respectfully. "My son, who named Willam?" the old king asked. Rennie replied, "It was his late mother, your majesty." "Ah, I see," the old king mused. "Willam is indeed the name she would have chosen for her child." Willam glanced at her confusedly, but Rennie had her own calculations. She lied because the emperor was immersed in memories of Willam's mother. He felt powerless with only one foolish son named Michael as his heir. But now, Willam had appeared as a miracle, bringing happiness and comfort to the emperor. That lie was just to polish Willam's value. He had to become closer to the emperor. Suddenly, the old king called out directly, "Rennie Leen, I know there's a special relationship between you and your foster father who raised you. His death will surely leave a deep grudge that cannot be forgotten, no matter how many years pass. So, would only Michael's leg be enough for you?" Rennie widened her eyes. "Enough for your revenge?" she asked straightforwardly. Remembering the memories of stabbing Michael's leg, she asked, "Is his leg enough?" Outside, the wind blew along with her resolute assertion, "No, your majesty, give me the life of Michael Allen, the son of your majesty, as well." The old king chuckled, "There's something everyone seems to have overlooked. I don't have just one but two sons. One is the timid son of the woman who killed the girl I loved. The other is Allen, the precious son who can do anything for my empire. Even though I don't like you, as long as you bring the prince as a replacement for Michael, it's enough. So, even though it's being exploited, I'll happily step onto the stage. I'll give you everything you want." Rennie couldn't believe what she was hearing. So, the old man doesn't hesitate to bring out his son for negotiation. The old king continued, "Even the life of the crown prince is ready to become a puppet dancing on the stage you've built. In return, when the time comes, you'll have to wear the princess's crown." Both Rennie and Willam were extremely surprised by this offer, but their reactions afterward were completely opposite. While Willam was embarrassed and blushing, Rennie was furious and retorted, "What?" Back in her private room, Rennie was still angry after hearing the irrational words of the old king. She angrily exclaimed, "The old man is sick. How could he use the rumor of my close relationship with Willam?" Thinking about it, she understood. Although Great Land Leden was created in a short time, it was not her achievement, but Leden's thunder, created by Willam. Therefore, as an emperor, he would be curious about why Willam devoted himself to Leen. Ultimately, when the rumors of the relationship between Leden's lord and Willam reached the old king's ears, he knew what he really wanted was her. Thinking about it, her face flushed at some unknown time. With that question at the time, perhaps the emperor had confirmed the old man's hypothesis. Willam's reaction was very sincere, no different from being caught by the emperor's weakness. He thought, if I become the crown prince, then Leen will ultimately belong to the Imperial family. Furthermore, I won't be the crown prince, just the prince's wife, meaning he doesn't see me as a crown prince. No way! Rennie ordered Willam, "Call Engine Struggle here." He pretended not to hear. "Willam," she reminded. He replied, "Engine Struggle hasn't returned yet, and why do you want to meet another man with that expression? You will become my wife." Willam discreetly glanced at Rennie and blushed when he uttered that. "What a failed joke!" "You're the only one who looks at me like that," Wyndham retorted. "Anyone who doesn't look at you like that is strange, just out of the bath with soaking wet clothes. It's too much for a 20-year-old boy." Rennie angrily grabbed his collar. "What did you say to a woman nearly 30 years old? Don't embarrass me anymore. Go inside quickly." Willam groaned, "Now you're dragging me into the bathroom again? Don't resist. Go wash your feet quickly and return to your room," she snapped. "Then let me wash your feet for you," Willam suggested. The sound of water splashed in the room. Willam carefully held her soft feet, making Rennie a bit nervous. Suddenly he accidentally made her ticklish, and she murmured softly, "Ah." But Willam gently reassured her, "Don't worry, without your permission, I won't do anything." After washing her feet clean, he gently dried them with a soft towel and mischievously kissed Rennie's thigh. Blushing, she reproached, "You said you wouldn't do anything without permission. Does anyone ask permission from the gods before honoring them?" Willam smoothly countered, continuing to charm her with his words. Rennie tried to change the subject to something more serious, saying, "Willam, what do you think of the Emperor's proposal?" Willam thoughtfully replied, "It's very tempting." Rennie hesitated. "He's not offering the crown prince position, but just the prince's, and he will pretend to be ignorant until he's sure you're a better candidate than Michael." Willam chuckled faintly. "It's all right. Didn't he say he would let you be my wife?" In the end, he only cared about what he wanted and nothing else. Rennie immediately blushed, silently cursing in her heart and solemnly saying to him, "I told you not to believe everything the Emperor says. He's a cunning old fox. He'll pay attention and check all relationships between you, me, and Glanetia." Wind made a dismissive gesture with the wash basin. "I know you're a bit upset." Rennie retorted, "You speak so simply because you don't understand the nature of that old man." Willam suddenly picked her up and replied, "Exactly." Rennie blushed even more every day, intending to stop him, but no one could resist the cute expression of this beloved dog. "I don't know anymore, so Rennie, please teach me." Willam put her down on the bed and whispered, "Rest well." Deep down, Rennie still felt uneasy about how Willam would accept the Emperor's proposal. As he strolled through the garden, he pondered the Emperor's proposition. Remembering the cunning face of the old man, Willam felt disgusted and repulsed. How dare he treat Rennie as a bargaining tool? His face revealed his anger. When Rennie genuinely smiles, a small dimple appears on her left cheek. "She has never shown me that smile. It only appears in front of that man," he lamented. His heart swelled with sadness. "I only wish to see her innocent smile. I only want her completely, never demanding anything from others." Inside Willam, a fire ignited. How dare the old man deceive Rennie like that? "Unfortunately, I can't kill him as before." Suddenly, there was a commotion nearby. Turns out it was Michael. He was wildly wielding a sword and cursing, ignoring the restraint of his young wife and the servants. In his rage, he forcefully pushed June Sinia away. Growling, "You ordinary wench! Why? Do you follow and obstruct me? Aren't you just the same kind as them?" He pointed his sword at her and threatened, "If you obstruct me again, I will kill you on the spot." Sinia could only whisper an apology even though she hadn't done anything. "You wretched creature! Such a nuisance!" he exclaimed before leaving, after humiliating her. But he quickly paused upon hearing her thanking someone behind him. Seeing Willam, his eyes showed clear hostility. "You, this villain! Whose person are you touching?" Willam calmly replied, "Because she stumbled." He shouted furiously, "I'm the only one allowed to touch her." June Sinia quietly clung to Willam's arm. He retorted, "Ah, I'm just a fool from the northeast. Who didn't know?" Michael grew even angrier. "Your arrogance knows no bounds. Is that your way of apologizing?" Recalling what the queen had revealed at the party, Cronin, the name of the woman who had been disrespectful to the Emperor. Michael trembled with anger, thinking, "He knows I'm the prince, yet he behaves arrogantly like this." The more he thought, the more he resented his treacherous father, unforgivable, that instigator. Thinking so, he gripped the sword of justice tightly and swung it. "I must kill him here and now." Michael yelled, "Die!" Sinia, witnessing the scene, screamed in horror. Willam grabbed his wrist to restrain him. "Let go of me!" Michael screamed madly, but Willam calmly said, "If you drop your sword, I'll let go." Michael roared like a wounded beast, "I'll kill you." Willam calmly replied, "If you can." Then he struck hard at the back of Michael's neck, knocking him unconscious on the spot. After witnessing the whole incident, Cinia was horrified, covering her mouth to stifle a scream. Willam caught Michael as he fell and lost consciousness. The attendants hurriedly called for help and rushed to check on him. "Please forgive my rudeness. It's the best way to prevent a bigger incident. He was drunk at the time, so let's just say it's a misunderstanding." Only now did Cinia regain her composure, saying, "What you just did was improper, but considering the danger you were in, I'll overlook it as a misunderstanding." She glanced surreptitiously at the young man before her. Her heart pounded wildly, seeming to want to leap out, as Willam's eyes quietly reflected her flushed face. "Thank you for your concern," Willam said softly, startling her. Cinia, embarrassed, touched her cheeks as she accidentally stared at him intently. "Go back to your room, quickly." Cinia hurriedly ran off without saying a word. The attendant replied, "Yes, Your Highness." Looking at Michael's pitiful state, Willam contemptuously thought, "Michael Alish, how foolish can you be? Now you're no different from worthless trash. You've completely lost your dignity." Willam looked closely, and in the darkness, his silhouette seemed to be doing just that. "Humph, that filthy scum," he thought angrily. "That vile creature, I will tear you apart into 100 pieces." As he left with the attendants, Cinia suddenly stopped and glanced back at Willam one last time. He ignored her gesture, only seeing Cinia smiling brightly like a young girl in love, before quickly leaving. Watching her actions, Willam quietly thought, some things never change. He fondly caressed the hilt of his sword and left the beautiful flower garden. The next morning, in the private chamber of the Duke's steward, Rennie was receiving a very important guest. This sweating young man was named Adder, the same person she had asked Azin to find in the capital. In his past life, he managed financial matters for the Heelcast. His visit to Heelcast was purely coincidental. Many things had changed in this life, so he wouldn't recognize her. But Rennie would create that coincidence herself. She began pouring out a long speech. "Hey Adder, the second son of Duke Jews, you're now a lowly financial officer. I heard you're not valued there, and obviously, as a second son, you wouldn't inherit the family. You've heard about Leen, right? I've unified 6 territories into one great kingdom." Hathor hesitated to respond, yes, congratulations." Before he could finish, his demeanor turned cold as he listened to Rennie's proposal. "I want to hand over the management of finances in the great territory to your family." Hathor was extremely surprised, but Rennie calmly pointed out the shortcomings in his great territory and mentioned an acquaintance who had recommended him. "Who is it?" he asked curiously. "If you agree to become my financial manager, then I'll answer that question," Rennie continued to bait him. Hathor remained indecisive. "Thank you, but this is too sudden, so." "Last year, you represented your superiors in the tax evasion case in the East, didn't you?" "It was indeed well covered up. I reviewed the expenditure records of the Orion territory." Of course, these were just lies from Rennie. She had heard about this from him in the past life. At that time, Hathor was directly responsible for tax collection in the Orion territory for 20 years. He worked tirelessly at the financial bureau, but his superiors not only failed to recognize Hathor's efforts, but also abandoned him out of fear of losing their positions. And now, Hathor is trying to contain his happiness as a High Lord. Someone who has never had any relationship with him before, sees his true power and worth. "After taking control of Orion, I found your name in the tax documents. Turns out, you are the only one who has kept the tax records so accurately. Moreover, I can also give you what you want," Rennie said coldly and cunningly as she almost completed this recruitment. Meanwhile, Hathor sweated profusely out of fear. "How does she know what I want?" Rennie quietly responded, I might seem like a suspicious flatterer, but in 5 years, she raised her hand, implying her suggestion, work for me for the next 5 years, then whether you leave or not, I won't stop you. Don't you have somewhere you need to go? He was overjoyed and immediately accepted her offer. Now Rennie had the most capable financial manager in the empire in her hands. At the same time, in a corner of the garden, a couple, regardless of challenges of status and prestige, were secretly meeting. Prince Consort, did you skip breakfast again today? You didn't eat dinner last night either. Are you feeling sick? How is that possible, after so many nights like that, not even a child? Then how could it be now? Ha ha! Indeed, is it because of the prince's palace? Cinia became agitated as she recalled the gossip behind her back. The incident from the previous night, Michael dismissed it as a strange dream when he saw the knight he despised. He thought of it and cursed as usual, truly a creature lurking beneath society. Cinia found it amusing, a creature lurking beneath society? He is the one who spouts such inferior insults. Suddenly, she felt dizzy from lack of moderation in eating and drinking, trying to make it to the nearby resting place, but everything seemed to be spinning, her body almost collapsing forward. Suddenly, someone deliberately stuck out a shoe, causing her to stumble. Cinia panicked. What did I just bump into? No way! As she closed her eyes waiting for a painful fall, she realized she had stumbled into a man. His arm gently caught her. Cinia looked up and saw that familiar face. Why is he here? She stuttered, this is the prince's palace, if you trespass. Willam calmly replied, I know, I came here just to stroll and try my luck. But I didn't expect to really meet you. He handed her the handkerchief dropped that night. Cinia blushed, that handkerchief, he kept it. I only threw it away carelessly, and yet. Cinia took the handkerchief and embarrassedly thanked him. It was indeed her intention to approach him in this way. Suddenly, Willam lifted her dress and checked something. Ah! What are you doing? She stood up embarrassed and moved away from his touch. Willam looked remorseful, I apologize for frightening you, causing you harm. He grabbed her ankle, stretched it, and massaged it, making her let out a small cry. Then Willam gently said, luckily, it's not swollen. But it could still swell, I'll help you inside. Willam reached out, taking the initiative, let's go. Cinia felt both delighted and worried at his invitation, I want to stay with him a little longer. But she decided to maintain her dignity and refused his offer. But before she could fall again, should I call your maid to help you inside? Cinia exclaimed, I don't need that. Feeling she had said too much, she softened her tone, no, I mean, you've helped me enough. Cinia grabbed his arm, it's not that I can't walk. I'm not that weak, and sometimes if someone can talk to me cheerfully, I can easily forget this pain. Then she boldly leaned into him tenderly. Willam sternly reminded her, others might see and spread rumors, you know. Cinia replied, I don't care, people always talk badly about me. Willam's gaze widened, he remembered Rennie had said something like that before. In an instant, he felt deeply regretful. His heart felt like it was burning in flames. But then, bap, Cinia slapped him hard, it's all because of you. Some memory surfaced as she yelled in anger, because of you, everyone talks bad about me. Willam silently absorbed every image appearing in his mind. His eyes looked disdainfully at her. And even though he was touching her, he felt he couldn't bear this filth. When he helped her to the resting place, those memories kept surfacing. Disgusting and despicable. That's why you have to listen to me. What she was saying in reality and what she was saying in those memories intertwined. I can't forget those vividly horrifying memories. Looking up at the blue sky, Willam remembered her, Rennie, a gentle but sensitive woman. She seemed like she could cry at any moment, but couldn't. She was the one who saved him. If this woman were kicked out of the house half naked, Rennie would be the type to give her own cloak to cover her instead of tearing her apart. That's why he would take this fragile body, so Rennie's hands wouldn't get dirty. He would endure being tainted for her. What was Willam thinking when he tried to seduce Cinia for the sake of his beloved?